The emperor bone floating above his jade mansion also gradually calmed down and emitted a soft light. I'm still lacking magic power. Just as he was thinking, the earth vein at the center of the lake surged, and a majestic spiritual energy gushed out. It was the spiritual energy of the Grand Cloud Mountain's earth vein. Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. This preparation was really thorough. He simply didn't need to do anything or think about it. As long as he enjoyed this rare opportunity, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. According to the current trend, it was not impossible for him to rise from middle-level foundation establishment all the way to the Shudan stage. Before he went down the mountain, he just happened to obtain from his master the various cultivation methods that extended all the way to the Shudan stage. Next, as long as he followed the prescribed order and silently enjoyed the opportunity, his strength would advance by leaps and bounds. He believed that Luli was also the same. And when the two of them simultaneously stepped into the Shudan stage, perhaps they still wouldn't have an advantage over the Yuanying stage Tiger King, but in the Grand Cloud Mountain, they would have the ability to move freely and disturb the situation. However, Wang Lu had never been a person who was content with his lot. Taking advantage of the time when Grand Cloud Fairy's feet lightly touched the surface of the lake, spreading out ripples, he released his primordial spirit and took the initiative to probe the Grand Cloud Mountain. In this world, there was no love without reason. Although from her standpoint, Grand Cloud Fairy indeed needed someone to help her expel the Beast Master School, but she didn't necessarily need to look for Wang Lu. The Millennium Moonlight, as well as this divine method of passing a day like a year, were enough to attract any cultivator. Why did Grand Cloud Fairy specifically pick him? If it was just a promise to give him a few spiritual treasures, or to take part of the moonlight from the Green Lake, Wang Lu would be more likely to accept it. However, this kind of excessive generosity was unreasonable. Of course, at present, Wang Lu didn't want to overly question anything, he was just curious. Why? When their primordial spirits touched, Wang Lu directly asked. Grand Cloud Fairy didn't directly answer, but instead released her own primordial spirit. Please take a look. Wang Lu was startled, and then nodded. He further released his primordial spirit and entered the world of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Compared to empty words, the scene that could be shown in the primordial spirit was a bit more convincing. Then, Wang Lu obtained the perspective of Grand Cloud Fairy. It was very unique. It was not as high and aloof as Wang Lu initially imagined, overlooking the overall situation, but also not limited to the grass and trees. In a trance, it was as if he had an insect's compound eyes, which could see thousands of scenes. At the same time, these thousands of scenes could be fused into one, forming an overall impression that was different from the human's perspective. It was like a piece of white and soft ball. This white ball was naturally the Grand Cloud Mountain. For the mountain spirit, through this white ball, it could control the overall situation. However, after looking for a while, Wang Lu didn't understand too much. Therefore, he dispersed the white ball, and through the thousands of compound eyes, he looked at the details. The scene in the mountain was quite different from what Wang Lu remembered. Not only was there no Beast Master School's unique stench in the mountain, even some of the mountain peaks had slight changes, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was filled with a fresh and natural smell. Was this the Grand Cloud Mountain of long ago? It was at least 1,000 years ago. 800 years ago, the Grand Cloud Mountain experienced a major earthquake. Afterwards, the main peak was formed, but in his current field of vision, there was no main peak. Before the arrival of the Beast Master School, the rulers of the Grand Cloud Mountain were the cultivators of the White Dragon Temple. They had developed here for over 1,000 years. Wang Lu could clearly see that the cultivators each occupied an immortal's cave or spiritual land, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth to advance their cultivation. At the same time, the low-level disciples hunted in the mountains, meeting their needs for survival. Therefore, Wang Lu couldn't help but be curious. For the Grand Cloud Mountain, was the conduct of these outsiders hateful? In order to satisfy their desire for good food, they slaughtered living creatures. In order to improve their cultivation, they couldn't wait to drain the spiritual veins. They should be counted as unscrupulous guests. Of course, they were still much better than the Beast Master school. However, in the primordial spirit of the Grand Cloud Fairy, Wang Lu didn't see any hatred or unhappiness. Why should I be unhappy? The voice of the Grand Cloud Mountain directly echoed in Wang Lu's primordial spirit. To me, they are the same as the birds and beasts in the mountain. Tigers eat rabbits, rabbits eat grass, and the wild grass in the mountain will also constantly absorb vitality from the soil. This is the natural law of heaven and earth. Wang Lu smiled. You're quite open-minded. Then, let's not talk about the desire for good food. They are constantly extracting the spiritual energy of the spiritual veins. You don't care? Look. The angle of view turned, from the ground to the ground. Wang Lu saw an endless network. Every line that formed the network was unbelievably thick. Within the lines, a huge amount of spiritual energy was surging. This is the spiritual veins of the Grand Cloud Mountain? Yes, it's the deeper spiritual veins. Whether there are more spiritual veins deeper, I can't see, but what you usually take is only this part. In his field of view, a line began to rapidly expand. More detailed scenes appeared. It turned out that on every line, there were countless parasitic branches. Within the branches, there were more branches. What ordinary cultivators took was only the branches of the branches. For the entire mountain, it actually didn't matter. What's more, the natural law of heaven and earth nourish all living creatures. In this mountain, besides the cultivators, the rest of the monsters and spirit beasts, who doesn't rely on the spiritual veins of heaven and earth to nourish? If I hate every single one of them, I'm afraid the Grand Cloud Mountain will become a land of death. Wang Lu was slightly moved. Is this the realm of the mountain spirits? The so-called heartless heaven and earth treat all living creatures as straw dogs. This is probably a different approach with the same result. How could a small mountain spirit dare to compare with the heaven and earth? Wang Lu said, compared to the heaven and earth, the Grand Cloud Mountain is indeed a drop in the ocean. But aren't the creatures living on the mountain also insignificant? Perhaps to you, this Millennium Moonlight essence isn't a very precious treasure. The Grand Cloud Fairy gently smiled. To me, it is indeed only 1,000 years of accumulation. Truly an amazing realm. Wang Lu sincerely praised. This Grand Cloud Mountain was not famous in the 9 regions. However, from the deep spiritual veins and the Grand Cloud Fairy's indifference, it was actually a heavenly paradise of inestimable value. It was no wonder that it could give birth to a mountain spirit with such an extraordinary temperament. Actually, I am not as amazing as you think. I am a mountain spirit, but also a living creature. I also have the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy of living creatures. I also have the fear of life and death. Wang Lu curiously asked, fear? This Grand Cloud Mountain hides deep spiritual veins. It is a standard heavenly paradise. As a mountain spirit here, you shouldn't die so easily, right? A mountain spirit is different from a mountain. For example, the Grand Cloud Mountain has existed for tens of millions of years, but our resuscitation has only been 1,000 years. Then, before that, the Grand Cloud Mountain didn't have a mountain spirit? Wang Lu asked with interest, I'd like to hear the details. It did, but 3,000 years ago, there was a big change here. The mountain range was cut off, the lake evaporated, and the creatures were plunged into misery and suffering. At that time, the mountain spirit also fell. After 1,000 years of recuperation, there was the current me. Perhaps the Grand Cloud Mountain will always exist. Even if a huge meteorite falls and turns a 500-mile radius into a deep pit, there will at least be a pit. But a mountain spirit is much more fragile. We are actually very easy to be hurt by external objects. Hearing the Grand Cloud Fairy's faint voice, Wang Lu was stunned speechless. His heart was filled with emotion. After a long time, Wang Lu sighed and said, "The mountain spirit has this side. I haven't read about it in any textbooks before. I've learned a lot." The Grand Cloud Fairy said, "Because we are fragile, when we are tolerant of all living things, we are also keenly aware of danger and take the initiative to act. This time, the cultivators from the Beast Master School made me feel very uneasy." Wang Lu said, "I can understand, this is a group of out-and-out local ruffians. I can tolerate them absorbing spiritual energy from the spiritual veins of the Grand Cloud Mountain. I can tolerate them interfering with the reproduction of the creatures here. I can even tolerate the evil of 10,000 spirit lock termination. But they shouldn't conspire against the moon spirit." Wang Lu smiled and said, "I can also understand, sisterly love is deep. Since you are a living creature, you have the 7 emotions and 6 desires of a living creature, then. The people from the Beast Master School must leave, their conspiracy must be destroyed. But my strength alone is not enough, so I found you." "Why me? You have such rich resources, of all people you could find, why must you find me?" "Because you don't fight." Wang Lu was stunned for a moment, then he laughed and said, "I don't fight? This reason is really new, beyond my expectation. Can you explain it in detail?" The Grand Cloud Fairy lightly explained, "Your talent in cultivation, among your kind, should be very good, right?" "Yes." Wang Lu was not modest at all. "So, you don't need to work as hard as the others, you can obtain more results." Wang Lu lightly frowned, "So to say, actually, it's fine, these years the situation has indeed improved a lot. Also, you haven't provoked an opponent that is too strong for you to handle." Wang Lu said, "Yes, I am very good at dancing, my relationships with people are very good." "So you are very proud. Even if you really want to, you don't like to struggle like them, even to the point of giving up everything." As she spoke, the Grand Cloud Fairy pointed with her finger, and the scene in front of Wang Lu changed again. It was about 300 or 400 years ago. A cultivator from the White Dragon Temple with poor talent tried to break through the King Pill several times without success. On the peak of the Moonlight Mountain, he howled to the sky, tears of blood flowing from his eyes. And in his great disappointment, his Taoist heart sank, and the demonic aura around him gradually grew. What happened to that cultivator after that, was not clear, but it was not hard to imagine. Of course, on the road of cultivation, there will be a threshold that forces you to crawl forward, but at least not now. The Grand Cloud Fairy said, "So, I don't have to worry about you scheming against me. Compared to other people, you are more reassuring." "Reassuring? I am flattered." Wang Lu was really surprised. "Actually, there are people of virtue and prestige in the cultivation world," the Grand Cloud Fairy said faintly. "I don't understand the morals of you humans, so I don't trust the moral standards of humans. I only believe in what I see with my own eyes. I believe that after you accept my gift, you will help me fulfill my wish, but if it is someone else, I am worried that they will ask for more. After all, as you said, I am sitting on rich resources, but I am not strong. Also, since your talent is better than the average person, you will improve more with the same moon essence, which is more beneficial to me." Although the doubts in his heart were not completely solved, Wang Lu reluctantly accepted this explanation. "Then, let me ask another question." Wang Lu asked again, "Where did you get this method of distorting time and space?" Compared to the 1,000-year moon essence that surged into his body and helped him increase his cultivation, the ripple of time and space from the Grand Cloud Fairy was the real key. There were all kinds of strange things in the world. If he could master this move, he could probably summon aura, and then destroy the world. However, the Grand Cloud Fairy did not answer directly. She only silently showed Wang Lu her memories. Wang Lu was not in a hurry, so he watched quietly. In the distortion of time and space, this scene lasted for a long time. The sea turned into mulberry fields, and the grand cloud mountain in front of him had passed 1,000 years. Wang Lu knew very well that this was the Grand Cloud Fairy showing her ordinary life. Although there were ups and downs, in the span of 1,000 years, everything seemed small and not worth mentioning. This experience made Wang Lu feel emotional, but it did not answer his question. Why? Just as Wang Lu began to get impatient and was about to open his mouth to ask, suddenly, what his primordial spirit saw shocked him. Above the lake, the figure of the Grand Cloud Fairy was gradually fading, turning from solid to incorporeal, and from incorporeal to nothing. That peerlessly beautiful face slowly melted into the void, leaving only a faint shadow. What was going on? For a moment, hundreds of thoughts ran through Wang Lu's mind. In the Ten Cloud Hall, the thick ancient books flipped through his mind. Not long after, a light flashed, and Wang Lu was even more shocked. This was not a supernatural power that distorted time and space. It was the Grand Cloud Fairy burning her life. She was born for 1,000 years, and now she turned these 1,000 years into ripples that spread into the green lake. This was a supernatural power that no one could imitate. Wang Lu felt the power that cleansed time and space, and looked at the gradually disappearing woman in front of him. The feeling in his heart was indescribable, and there was only one question. Why? Aren't you a living creature? Since you're a living creature, you should know that death is not a wonderful experience, and you should avoid death like the plague. In fact, isn't it because you have the joy, anger, sorrow, and fear of a living creature that you came to me and wanted me to help you expel the Beast Master School? But now you're cutting your own life, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? You're a mountain spirit, the mountain spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain Paradise. Your life is more precious than everyone in the Beast Master School put together. You should be very clear about this. What are you thinking? The Grand Cloud Fairy still did not answer. She only silently displayed her 1,000-year journey. At this time, the journey was about to reach its end. There was only about 60 to 70 years left. Suddenly, time stopped, and the scene in front of him stopped at a full moon night. Tens of thousands of golden threads fell from the sky, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged like never before. All living things in the Grand Cloud Mountain felt this, and walked out from their resting places to absorb the gifts from heaven. 60 years ago, the Grand Cloud Fairy was quietly standing on the peak of the mountain, bathing in the Emperor Essence. Then, like lightning cutting through the night sky, a brand new breath of life formed in her belly. Wang Lu's mind was suddenly enlightened. Why were there two mountain spirits in the Grand Cloud Mountain at the same time? Why did the high and mighty Grand Cloud Fairy take the initiative to expel the Beast Master School? Why did she not hesitate at all, and pay a sacrifice that could not be rationally explained? Because the immortal Beast Moon Spirit was the child of the Grand Cloud Fairy. Wang Lu let out a sigh, and just as he was about to sigh, at this time, the figure of the Grand Cloud Fairy completely disappeared. There was only one sentence left for Wang Lu. Xian, please take care of her. Chapter 201. When he rose from the lake, the sky was already bright. On the surface of the lake, there was neither the Grand Cloud Fairy nor the Moon Spirit. There was only the reflection of the rolling green mountains and the golden light. The early morning sun brought a touch of warmth, and the fragrant mountain breeze blew, as if a woman's gentle hand was wiping away the lake water on the person in the lake. What a long dream! The carefree Luli happily swam ashore and then beckoned to Wang Lu, who was still at the center of the lake. Senior brother, come up. Wang Lu chuckled, and then his aura changed. His whole body, in defiance of gravity, continued to float to the surface of the lake until his whole body was out of the lake. His toes gently touched the surface of the lake, and a ripple spread out. His body was leakless, and his magical power was transparent. This was indeed the sign of Xiaofan's stage. He thought that it would take him several years to reach this stage, but after this dream, it was within his reach. The smile on the distant Lu Li's face mostly came from this. Just now, when she swam in the lake, her body actually didn't touch the lake water at all. After coming ashore, her whole body was dry. However, although his cultivation base had been greatly advanced, Wang Lu couldn't be happy. The Grand Cloud Fairy was no longer there, and the Moon Spirit had also avoided him. The previous ripple of the dream seemed to have never happened. However, the trace in the bottom of his heart could not be erased. Senior brother, come up. Lu Li once again urged him. Wang Lu put down the emotion in his heart, tiptoed, and left a circle of ripples on the surface of the lake. His figure lightly soared straight to the sky and then landed on the ground. Nanfei's method had never been good at footwork, but now, it had the ability to tread on the waves. Congratulations on picking the immortal fate. On the lakeside, Zen Master Guru, who was cooking a wild boar on a grill, also greeted Wang Lu with a smile. As a senior whose cultivation level has reached the peak of Yuanying realm, she can naturally see what happened just now. The ripples of time spread in the green lake, and the Grand Cloud Fairy dissipated little by little on the surface of the lake. Therefore, she can also understand the seriousness on Wang Lu's face. However, this was immortal fate. On the path of cultivation, there were many similar things. Parting in life and death was a very normal thing. She believed that Wang Lu himself was aware of this, so there was no need to persuade him. Sure enough, when Wang Lu walked to the grill in a few steps, the solemn expression on his face disappeared, replaced by his usual smile. How long has it been? 2 days. Xiaoqi said, just as you expected, the beast taming school didn't do anything against us. Wang Lu reached out to tear off a hind leg from the grill and explained, it's normal. Xia will work hard. Previously, Wang Lu had judged that after the battle in the valley, a Xia would try his best to cover up his failure and seek an opportunity to make a comeback. As long as they did not act rashly in a short period of time, there would not be any danger. This judgment was indeed correct. But, your EQ is really high. Wang Lu snorted. You said my EQ is high? You might as well praise Lu Li for her intelligence and wit. Upon hearing this, Lu Li, who was nibbling the pig leg, raised her head. Really? Really? Of course not, you're a fool. Wang Lu mercilessly attacked his junior sister, and then said to Xiaoqi, if you put yourself in Tiger King's shoes and you have an extremely selfish and unscrupulous elder like a Xia, can you expect him to honestly explain everything to you after doing something bad? Indeed not. So, it's easy to judge. However, there are only 3 days left until the 15th of the 7th month. No matter how much he delays, it's time for him to break out. And the means he will use, I can roughly guess, so there's no need to worry. No need to worry? The cat girl, who had unknowingly walked to the side of the fire, softly said, I've checked before. Their animal collar is about to be successfully refined, and the 10,000 spirit lock termination array is about to be launched. Our time is all ready, don't worry, the beast taming collars are not a problem. Let them refine it. The 10,000 spirit fiend lock formation is not a problem. Let them set it up. This time, even Xiaoqi was surprised. Let them do whatever they want. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the means to stop them. The beast taming collar and the myriad spirit lock termination array are both things that the beast taming school has put all of their efforts into. No matter which one we destroy, we'll have to fight against 10 king pill cultivators and a nascent soul cultivator. With my current strength, I'm still lacking a little. As Wang Lu spoke, he chuckled. In other words, he was just a little bit away. Xiaoqi warned, you and Lu Li are indeed geniuses, and your real strength is far higher than what you see on the surface. But the beast taming school is not a lowly school, especially that nascent soul great elder, his strength is not small. I know. Level 8 nascent soul +1. His strength can be considered decent. However, if it weren't for the fact that he has too many shrimp soldiers and crab generals under his command, he wouldn't have been able to defeat him. If the several of us join forces, and with my command, it's not like we can't beat him. Xiaoqi was surprised. Hey, do you know what you're talking about? That's a Yuanying stage monster. Even if we don't consider the spirit beast, just his body alone is. Wang Lu sneered. Yuanying stage is right, but monster is not necessarily. Compared to the group of +20 monsters on Spirit Sword Mountain, he can only be regarded as a minion. Right now, I am level 9 Shudan +24, and Lu Li is level 7 Shudan +21. With the two of us joining forces, even if that stupid cat is at its peak, it would still be beaten to a pulp by us. Tiger King is actually not that great. Xiaoqi gawked for a moment and then asked, you still have a card in your hand, right? Yes, I just designed it. It can only be used after Shudan stage, so I don't have any practical experience. However, I believe its power will be unforgettable. Very well, since you're so confident, I won't say anything. Xiaoqi thus ate the meat in peace and didn't say anything. In fact, since she met Wang Lu, she scrupulously abided by her duty as a senior guardian. She never interfered with Wang Lu's decision, nor did she try to influence or sway him. She would only contribute her strength when needed. In short, this time, I intend to use the hard way. There won't be so many conspiracies, and I'll fight fair and square. Wang Lu said and then smiled. However, this tactic itself has a bit of a trick. Those Beastmaster school wastes should never think that I would meet the enemy head-on. Taking them by surprise is the first condition for any tactic to work. Moreover, officially appearing on the 15th day of the 7th month is actually the most advantageous for us. Among the Beastmaster school people, a part of them have to maintain the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, a part of them have to guard against our appearance, a part of them have to guard against the interference of White Dragon Temple and other forces, and a part of them have to capture the moon spirit. Each of them has their own responsibility, which means that they don't have good mobility. As long as we attack one point, it's possible that they will be badly battered. Xiaoqi didn't speak, but in her heart, she was thinking, similarly, that day is also the most advantageous for the Beastmaster school people. All of their arrangements have been completed, and one person can be used as 10. But how could Wang Lu not think of this problem? Most likely, he already has a plan in mind, right? It was really hard to imagine that the cultivators of Non-Phase Peak would be so open and aboveboard. And sure enough, Wang Lu also put on a scheming appearance. While eating the barbecue, from time to time, he let out a sinister laugh. Until everyone's eyes were focused on him, Wang Lu waved his hand. For the next 2 days, just eat the meat in peace. 2 days later, on the 15th day of the 7th month, we'll play a big game. 2 days passed by in a flash. The distant mountain range carried the fiery red setting sun. The night has yet to arrive, but the surrounding spiritual energy has already faintly sensed it and began to become noisy and restless. Wang Lu, Lu Li, Xiaoqi, Quan Zouhua, Cat Girl, all of them have been fully prepared and adjusted their state to the peak as much as possible. Even the Cat Girl, with the help of Xiaoqi, has restored 60 to 70% of her ability. With such a lineup, if Wang Lu's card was indeed effective, they could indeed wrestle with that Yuanying stage Tiger King. However, it was only limited to Tiger King's one-on-one fight. If he joined forces with his spirit beast, the current lineup would be far from enough. Next. Standing at the head of the team, Wang Lu, as if victory was already in his grasp, brimmed with a confident smile. Let us complete the last part of this main task. Then, he turned his gaze to the green lake. Moon spirit, did you hear that? On the surface of the lake, a pure white spirit dog slowly appeared. It quietly lay on the surface of the water, and its two clear eyes looked at Wang Lu. Wang Lu said, "If you come with us, we will send you to a dangerous place. But only there, you can transform into a human and get rid of the shackles." Moon spirit quietly looked at him, without joy nor sorrow. However, this indifferent expression was also a statement. Do you want to say that transforming into a human or not is not important? Don't be ridiculous. Grand Cloud Fairy did not hesitate to die to complete her wish, which is to let you transform into a human. Even if you, as a spirit of the world, are not mature yet, and your spirituality is not complete, at least you should understand her good intentions, right? Moreover, if you maintain this form for the rest of your life, wouldn't that make people laugh at Grand Cloud Fairy, saying that such a beautiful woman actually gave birth to a dog? Are you worthy of her 60 years of nurturing you? Xiaoqi said, "Hey, aren't your comforting lines a bit crooked?" Wang Lu ignored him and continued, "The mountain spirit of Grand Cloud Mountain was originally nameless. For more than 1,000 years, she only took the name Grand Cloud as her name, but she gave you the name Shixian. Why do you think so? You were fortunate to be enlightened by the moonlight 60 years ago. That's a lucky chance that not many creatures in the entire 9 regions can get. Although Grand Cloud Mountain is a blessed land, it can't accommodate an immortal beast. Sooner or later, you will have to leave." Moon Spirit tilted her head, as if to stubbornly express her objection. Wang Lu tried to persuade her again, "If you throw a tantrum now, Grand Cloud Fairy can't be resurrected, and you can't change your fate of being enslaved. Wasting the sacrifice of Grand Cloud Fairy, you, Moon Spirit was still indifferent." Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, "Because you haven't transformed into a human, so you can't understand my words, right?" Wang Lu thought for a moment and then took out a bone from his mustard seed bag. "Come." Moon Spirit stood up and walked on the waves. Chapter 202. Facing the setting sun of the 15th day of the 7th month, under the cover of Xiaoqi's spell, Wang Lu and the others easily crossed several sentry posts on the Grand Cloud Mountain and gradually approached the stage tonight. Wang Lu walked behind Xiaoqi. While walking, the interval between each step was strictly consistent, and his body's center of gravity was also unchanged, completely ignoring the terrain under his feet. In addition, his magical power was restrained inside his jade mansion, forming its own circulation, without any communication with the outside world, as if he was isolated from the world. This was a new ability after entering the Shidon stage. With the gradual condensation of magical power into a core in the Jade Mansion, the amount of magical power was no longer important. During the fight, relying solely on the supply of the Shidon in the Jade Mansion was enough to cope with the vast majority of the situation. In other words, it was self-sufficient, without any external help. From another point of view, no matter how harsh the external environment was, he still had the power to survive. Behind Wang Lu was Lu Li. The girl's temperament and Wang Lu's were diametrically opposed. Her breath was perfectly integrated with the nature, but different from the situation when she was in the high-level foundation establishment stage. The grass and trees around her seemed to be sharper than usual. That was the sword intent that was being emitted. With only low-level Shidon stage cultivation base, Lu Li still couldn't perfectly control the newly condensed Shidon in her Jade Mansion. However, from another point of view, when Lu Li decided to make her sword move, what kind of power could this excessively powerful Shidon burst out? The cat girl, who walked forth, stared at Lu Li in front of her with envy, longing, and also a trace of fear. That was her instinctive fear of dangerous things as a spirit beast. Although her stage was many times higher than Lu Li's, if they really fought, she didn't have the confidence to win. While she was indulging in flights of fancy, she suddenly heard Xiaoqi stop and say, Sure enough, as you expected, the inside is tight but the outside is loose. The Beast Master School's power is completely concentrated in several key points, while the other places are almost open. It turned out that the group had just crossed a small stream. A few days ago, there was a patrol team led by a Shudan stage disciple, but now, only a few spirit beasts with keen five senses were left to guard this place, so the patrol force was greatly reduced. Wang Lu said, "It's very normal. At this critical time, they still have no choice but to scatter their precious forces all over the Grand Cloud Mountain. If they don't have a specific target, it can only mean that their preparation is too inadequate." Before the 15th day of the 7th month, no matter how barbaric and uneducated the people of the beast-taming school are, they will still reach a tacit agreement with the surrounding schools to strangle most of the unknown factors. Xiaoqi asked, "What about us?" "You'll have to ask Summer." Wang Lu's smile showed a bit of sarcasm. "A few days ago, we drank wine and ate meat in Qinghu. Qinyang, can you guess what a Xia's life is like?" Xiaoqi looked up and thought for a moment. "Most likely it's not good. In the valley, he suffered heavy casualties, moreover, he also lost his partner Ling Yan, losing everything. He wanted to make a comeback, but he couldn't find any trace of us. He didn't even have the chance to make a comeback. Just thinking about it makes people uncomfortable." Wang Lu said, "So, if you were a Xia, what would you do?" "Me? If there's really no other way, I can only admit my mistake to the Great Elder," Wang Lu said with a smile, "and then wait to be pinched to death by the furious Tiger King. In fact, the right thing to do is to make the best of a mistake." "Make the best of a mistake?" "For example, I can claim that the troublemakers have already been killed by the 10,000 beasts' great array in the valley, but their hidden strength is very astonishing, causing both sides to be defeated and seriously injured." Xiaoqi gawked. "Say we're dead? Empty words without proof, who would believe him? At least he needs to get a few spoils of war to be convincing, right?" Wang Lu said, "Empty words without proof. But on the other hand, if we want to doubt him, we need to come up with proof that we're still alive. Is there anyone who can come up with that? A Xia can claim that the reason why there are no spoils of war, or even no corpses, is because we come from a secret sect, and our bodies are sealed by the sect. Once we die, our corpses and magical treasures will self-destruct. Although there's no evidence for this claim, as long as we don't show up, other people can't prove it. Isn't this too far-fetched? Therefore, a Xia's days are certainly not easy. Although I'm not clear about the friendship between a Xia and Tiger King, since it was Tiger King himself who invited him from the Southern Heaven region, if it's not necessary, he would not be too harsh on him. Because in the end, it would be Tiger King's responsibility. On the other hand, the most important thing right now is to capture immortal beasts, so it's not worth spending too much effort on the details. It's just that he let a Xia deal with us because he's worried that we'll disrupt the plan. However, as time goes by, according to common sense, our chance to make a move is getting less and less. And until now, we still haven't shown up, so it's basically certain that we, the uncertain factor, have been wiped out. Thus, although the price for a Xia to do things is high, the task is still completed. But this kind of lie will always be exposed. It's also possible that it won't be exposed. At least, it's better than dying on the spot under Tiger King's hand. Hearing this, Xiaoqi couldn't help but shake his head. For his own selfishness, he doesn't hesitate to expose the key strategy of Beast Master School to risk. Isn't this the kind of person you're talking about as a pig teammate? Wang Lu laughed. From my point of view, this is a song of praise for the loyal soul. With that, his smile faded. Therefore, for this kind of extremely selfish person, no matter how brilliant his ability is, he absolutely cannot be used. Xiaoqi asked, then are you going to make your move before dark? No, it's still too early to make my move before dark. The darkness before dawn is the most difficult to bear. Everyone knows this truth. Right now, Beast Master School is tight on the inside but loose on the outside. We have to wait until both inside and outside are loose before we can make our move. Loose both inside and outside, we have to wait for their beast collar to be completed, wait for the 10,000 spirit lock termination array to firmly lock the Emperor Molasses, wait for the Beast Master School from top to bottom to think that this is a great success, and then let their beautiful dream be shattered. 7th Madam, your spell is another key. At least, it must be able to bless us to get close to the edge of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array. Shao Qi slapped his Buddhist staff, patted his chest, and guaranteed, rest assured, leave it to me. Then let's do our final rest here. When the moon rises, it's time for the big show to begin. The blood-red color of the sky dimmed little by little with the passage of time. The deep curtain of night gradually sank, and from the back of the mountains, a bright moon rose. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the moon on the Grand Cloud Mountain was dyed with a touch of gold. Its circular outline swayed with a wave-like luster, like a freshly opened poached egg. On the Crown Cloud Peak, the main peak of the Grand Cloud Mountain, more than 300 people of the Beast Master School were scattered around the peak, holding their breath in rapt attention, waiting for the golden poached egg in the sky to break open and enter the next stage. They were waiting for the Emperor Molasses' vision to appear, and the immortal beast that knew how to hide itself could not help but fall into the trap. For this day, they had been planning for several years. From the southern heaven region, they had made too many efforts and sacrifices, so they absolutely could not afford to fail. The battlefield was set in the Full Moon Valley under the Crown Cloud Peak, which was originally a plain. Not long ago, the 5 mountain broken veins technique squeezed the mountain peak and turned it into a closed cage. Moreover, unlike Ling Yan and Xia's feng shui line spiritual energy, the Full Moon Valley was a solid mountain surrounded by mountains. Even if the spell was interrupted, the cage would not disappear. More than 100 Foundation Establishment and Shudan Stage disciples were distributed throughout the valley, using their own magical power to fuse with the feng shui line spiritual energy to maintain the operation of the astonishing array in the Full Moon Valley. The Grand Cloud Mountain, which was usually tranquil in the past, at this time, presented a deathly silence. Most of the disciples were somewhat uncomfortable. Damn, I always feel a chill on the back of my neck, and my internal breathing is also unstable. A Foundation Establishment disciple stood at the top of a pine tree according to the diagram. His tall and sturdy body stood on a thin branch. He didn't use any spells, nor did he feel the slightest pressure, which showed that he had a rather high cultivation level. However, this Foundation Establishment disciple with a high cultivation level had a lot of cold sweat on his forehead, and he seemed to be restless. Not far away, standing on top of a puddle, an older senior brother said, "This is the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, the negative energy and resentment are 100 times more than usual. If there's no array diagram to suppress this place, it would be a mass grave, a pit of 10,000 people. You cultivate the Wild Heart Sutra, so your innate sense is strong, so it's normal for you to feel uncomfortable. However, there's no need to worry. The elders are suppressing the array diagram, so the power of the evil ghost won't be able to make any waves." Hey, I know, otherwise, I would have changed shifts with other people to do things outside the array diagram. Although the reward is less, it's much more comfortable. Senior brother, there shouldn't be any problem with this operation, right? The senior brother said with a smile, what problem could there be? When the elders laid down this trap, they had already calculated all possible changes. No one will be able to change our outcome. With that, the senior brother raised his head and saw the golden disc above his head rippled, indicating that it was about to disintegrate. At the same time, on the top of the Crown Cloud Peak, Tiger King Lei Jin slightly raised his head. On the night of the Emperor Essence, the change in the surrounding spiritual energy had touched the wild nature deep in his heart, making him restless. However, the dual-colored Yuanying in his jade mansion still maintained its calm. He was the division leader, so in this kind of important time, he must be calm. While suppressing his impulse, Tiger King replayed the whole plan in his mind, and then he opened his mouth to say to the person beside him, "Xia, are you sure they will make their move?" With that majestic tiger head turned around, and his eyes met the person beside him. Surprisingly, it was Xia. This King Pill's worst elder should have been severely punished for his previous failure, yet at this time, he stood there indifferently, completely not caring about his previous failure. "I'm not completely sure." Xia lightly replied. "However, in the last operation, they returned with a great victory, so there's no reason for them to just disappear. Especially the person who leads them. He's very greedy. He won't give up until he achieves his goal, and he doesn't know when to stop. Therefore, he will most likely make his move again, even if the risk is very great." After a pause, Xia said, "Perhaps in his view, there's a huge opportunity here. Because I may conceal the news of the failure of the last operation for my own selfishness, thus making you careless and giving him an opportunity to take advantage of." Upon hearing this, Tiger King was slightly stunned, but then he laughed. "Ha ha ha, yes, according to your temper, that kind of thing is indeed possible." Xia slightly wryly smiled. "In your eyes, am I that unbearable?" Tiger King humphed. "Am I not?" Xia helplessly said, "You're right, I'm indeed a selfish person. If it weren't for you, I would indeed conceal the news, but," Tiger King interrupted, "no harm. I don't care about your selfishness. If people don't look out for themselves, what's the big deal? As long as you're by my side, whatever benefit you want, just go ahead and do it. If I can't give it to you, it's only natural for you to abandon me." Xia faintly sighed. "Lei Zhen, I really don't have anything to say about you. Ha ha ha. I, Lei Zhen, have always been like this." Tiger King laughed wildly and fiercely hugged Xia. "Next, let's wait for them to show up. Since they dare to hurt you, they must pay the price in blood." Chapter 203. Speaking of which, don't you think your action is too risky? Standing at the foot of the mountain outside the full moon valley, Xiaoqi couldn't help but ask. The golden full moon had risen into the sky, and under the cover of the spell, they miraculously sneaked into the full moon valley, which was the edge of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array. The action was imminent. As the captain, Wang Lu looked calm as if victory was in his grasp, but the uneasiness in Xiaoqi's heart was getting stronger and stronger. Hearing Xiaoqi's question, Wang Lu retracted his gaze from the full moon valley and asked with a smile, "It's not that risky, right? It's not like we're going to steal Hichu Doran's wife, it's not that difficult, right?" Xiaoqi said, "When you analyzed the situation before, the opponent's mistake accounted for a very important part. It's almost like betting that the opponent will make a mistake. Although your analysis is also very reasonable, that Xia is indeed likely to do that kind of thing, but to pin the hope of victory on the opponent's mistake, isn't it too?" Wang Lu asked, "Who said I'm relying on the opponent's mistake? I never said that Xia will do that, I just made a deduction from a reasonable point of view. However, there are many unknown factors. Even if he doesn't do what I expected, it's not surprising, and it doesn't matter." Xiaoqi was stunned. "It doesn't matter? If the opponent has already prepared for it, it doesn't matter?" Wang Lu smiled faintly. "Yes, it doesn't matter. I've already told you, Qinyang, that this time, I want to crush them with absolute strength. There's no need to resort to tricks." Xiaoqi stared at Wang Lu, trying to read his real thoughts from his face. "Crush them with absolute strength? Are you sure you won't be crushed? With just Tiger King alone, our side only has a 50% chance of winning at most. Wang Lu saw that Xiaoqi was still skeptical, so he further explained, in essence, I'm an open and above-board person. Before he could finish his words, he heard a laugh. Pfft! It was Lu Li who couldn't hold back her laughter. Wang Lu said angrily, "What are you laughing at?" Lu Li immediately restrained her smile and inexplicably said, "Master said, when other people tell jokes, it's best to laugh to show respect." "Who told you I was joking?" Lu Li plausibly said, "Master said, telling a ridiculous story with a straight face is the basis of a joke." "Senior brother, didn't you just do that? You're obviously the most treacherous." Wang Lu was instantly annoyed. "Hey, when was I sinister? Did I rape you?" Wang Lu initially thought that Lu Li was fussing over the matter of him winning the fight on the cloud platform a few years ago, but who knew? Lu Li blinked her beautiful big eyes and innocently asked, "What is asterisk asterisk?" Wang Lu suddenly had a feeling of digging his own grave. After gawking for a moment, he slowly opened his mouth to explain, "The meaning is, although the age is old, the strength is still strong, so it's called old but strong, short for asterisk asterisk." Pfft! This time, Xiaoqi couldn't bear it anymore. Lu Li innocently nodded. "I understand. According to senior brother's explanation, sect leader uncle is asterisk asterisk, right? Yes, remember to praise him when you return to the mountain." "I know." Lu Li nodded and then said, "Thank you, senior brother, for your advice." "You're welcome," Wang Lu said to Xiaoqi after dealing with Lu Li, "in short, believe me." Xiaoqi's smile somewhat twitched. "Okay, I believe you." While speaking, several people simultaneously stopped talking and then looked up at the sky. The egg yolk in the sky finally broke. The Emperor Molasses is coming. In the full moon valley, many people exclaimed in unison. When the time came, the golden full moon melted, like a broken egg yolk, and was torn by the dark night, turning into thousands of golden threads, which blotted out the sky and spread out. The speed of spreading was quite fast. In just a few breaths, half of the night sky seemed to be shrouded by this melting moonlight. Then, the moonlight sank, and the thousands of golden threads in the sky, like the pattering of spring rain, fell to the world. Some of the Beast Master School's people who stood at the top of the full moon valley immediately felt the strangeness. Although the golden moonlight had yet to truly descend, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had already begun to surge violently. Some cultivators with a keen sense of spiritual chi felt as if a violent storm was howling in their ears. Thunderclaps continuously rang out in the sky, causing their hearts to tremble. This was a real change in the world. The Emperor Molasses that appeared once every 60 years was not evenly distributed to every corner of the 9 regions. In the southern heaven region, they had also experienced the Emperor Molasses, but at that time, the surrounding spiritual energy was only a fraction of what it was today. No wonder it had the power of an immortal beast. This Grand Cloud Mountain was really a blessed place. In fact, at this time, the Grand Cloud Mountain was in an unprecedented tranquility. The disorder of the surrounding spiritual energy was not manifested in the slightest. The golden threads in the sky silently fell, and everything changed in silence. Seeing that the moonlight was about to fall on the Grand Cloud Mountain, the great elder on the Crown Cloud Peak snorted and broke the silence. 10,000 Spirit Lock Termination Great Array, open. Under this order, more than 100 cultivators inside and outside the Full Moon Valley responded in unison, yes. Then they recited the incantation. Each of the more than 100 people performed their own duty, and each person's incantation was different. More than 100 people recited in unison, and the sound waves converged like a tide, setting off a burst of noise in the Full Moon Valley. At the same time, the dense energy that was suppressed by the 4 King Pill Elders with the 4 Symbols method began to break out. On the eve of the Emperor Essence, the tens of thousands of spirit dogs that were raised in the valley were finally squeezed out of their last trace of value. The most famous butcher in the division made his move and used the cruelest means to kill them all. Tens of thousands of wronged spirits with soaring resentment condensed in the world, but they were firmly suppressed by the 10,000 spirit lock termination great array. At this time, when they were released, the entire Crown Cloud Peak and the Full Moon Valley were shocked. That gloomy evil energy soared up to the sky from the Full Moon Valley, like a volcanic eruption straight to the sky, unstoppable. The Beast Master School cultivators, who were maintaining the array in the valley, vaguely saw tens of thousands of malicious spirits screaming in unison. Different from the ordinary wandering spirits and wild ghosts, the evil energy deliberately created by the Beast Master School condensed into extremely powerful malicious spirits. If not for the 10,000 spirit lock termination great array firmly suppressing them, the energy of these tens of thousands of malicious spirits would be enough to destroy a human city. However, for the Beast Master School at this time, the role of these malicious spirits was only a laborer. When they were stimulated by the array, the Yin energy soared up to the sky, and then, like a whirlpool, it pulled the moonlight all over the sky. Ghosts were born in the midst of the Yin energy, and similarly, the existence of ghosts would also attract the Yin energy to continue to gather, the two complementing each other. The Emperor Molasses was the most superior essence of the moonlight, and it had endless wonderful uses. It was by no means an evil thing, but its essence was still a Yin energy, which could be attracted by ghosts. The 10,000 spirit lock termination great array created by the Beast Master School plundered all the Emperor Molasses within the range of the entire Grand Cloud Mountain and concentrated it in the Full Moon Valley, not even a little bit leaked out. In this way, unless the Grand Cloud Mountain Moon Spirit was willing to give up this once in 60 years immortal opportunity, otherwise, if she wanted the Emperor Molasses, she could only appear in the Full Moon Valley. However, isn't the range of effect of this 10,000 spirit lock termination great array too difficult? In the Full Moon Valley, a cultivator somewhat uneasily asked, the range of the Emperor Molasses is limited to the Grand Cloud Mountain. Is it possible for the immortal beast to transform outside the Grand Cloud Mountain? Impossible, the immortal beast is not yet fully mature, it can't leave the boundary of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Even if it is forced to leave, it can't transform. This point has been repeatedly confirmed by the elders, otherwise, what's the point of going through so much trouble to set up this array? Instead of worrying needlessly, it's better to take this opportunity to cleanse the primordial spirit. Such pure Emperor Molasses is a priceless treasure. Senior brother is right, The conversation between the two brothers had not yet ended, when suddenly, a strange fluctuation came from afar. When the two of them were still pondering what it was, they heard the roar of the Tiger King on the Crown Cloud Peak. Good, there really is a change. There really is a change? When the senior brother heard this, he was startled. Carefully feeling the fluctuation, his complexion suddenly changed. That's the breath of the immortal beast. The moon spirit has appeared. At this time, all the creatures within 500 miles of the Grand Cloud Mountain were aware of this unique fluctuation. Deep in their hearts, there was a slight fear and trembling. This was the instinctive fear of the lower-level creatures towards the higher-level creatures. And the one that could descend upon the Grand Cloud Mountain and suppress all things was naturally the legendary immortal beast Moon Spirit. The Moon Spirit had appeared, but it was not in the Full Moon Valley as expected, but on the Crown Cloud Peak, several King Pill elders surrounded the great Elder Tiger King. One of them pinched his fingers and said in a deep voice, "At Green Lake." Another person was surprised. At Green Lake? That's the edge of the Grand Cloud Mountain. If it appears there, how can it receive the Emperor Molasses and transform? As if in response to this question, in the direction of the distant Green Lake, a silver-white beam of light soared into the sky. The end of the beam of light blended into the pale golden night sky. Then, the Emperor Molasses that was firmly pulled by the 10,000 spirit lock termination array began to disperse and fell vertically along the silver beam of light. What? In the full moon valley, a King Pill elder who was in charge of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array suddenly stood up and incredulously looked at the distant beam of light. How could it be? It actually pulled the Emperor Molasses. Although the division of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array was not wide, its effectiveness was not diminishing. Within the range, the pulling power was almost absolute. What else could be more powerful than tens of thousands of malicious spirits? It's the moonlight. On the crown cloud peak, the elder who just calculated with his fingers coldly revealed the truth. In the Green Lake, there's a considerable amount of moonlight essence hidden. It's probably the mountain spirit's previous accumulation. Although for the moon spirit, the moonlight essence that has settled down is too old and lacks the freshness of a living creature, so it can't transform. But after all, it's the same moonlight energy, so it can blend with each other. It has a natural attraction to the Emperor Molasses. Oh, I really didn't think that there would be such a trick. It's unexpected. The great elder coldly laughed. So what? When did the Beast Master School do things? When did everything have to be calculated? If we can calculate, then so be it. If we can't calculate, then we'll use our absolute strength to crush it. Our strength is 100 times that of the opponent, so the situation is ever-changing, but it's still under control. Playing petty tricks will only dig our own grave. With that said, Tiger King raised his thick arm. On his wrist, an unremarkable wristband lit up, and from it, a tall phantom rose. This phantom had a dog's face, and its entire body was covered in black fur. It had a total of 4 arms, each holding a whip, a torch, a soldering iron, and a mace. Each of these tools was covered in dark red blood. As soon as the phantom appeared, it let out an excited roar. Then, one of its arms swung, and the whip in its hand suddenly elongated, flying toward the distant Green Lake. Caught you! The phantom let out a shrill scream. The whip had already reached its target, and at the same time, it also felt the target's intense struggle. Useless, 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 useless. While laughing wildly, the mysterious man took back the whip. In the distant sky, a pure white silhouette was helplessly pulled by the whip and flew over. Although it was struggling, it couldn't get rid of the whip's restraint. Tiger King raised his arm, and the light from the wristband became even brighter. A beast is a beast. Even if it has some cunning tricks, with this beast collar here, there's no room for you to struggle. That's right, it was the spiritual treasure beast collar, and that phantom was the spirit of the beast collar. This spiritual treasure was made from the blood sacrifice of 10,000 spirits, which had an almost absolute suppressive force against the dog-type spirit beast. Let alone a mere immortal beast that had yet to transform, even if that immortal beast successfully transformed, once it was locked by the beast collar, it would absolutely not be able to break free. Tiger King felt the immortal beast's aura coming from his wrist and quickly determined that the target was correct. The situation was as expected, very smooth. However, in this case, Xia's judgment has fallen through. Those people didn't make their move. Did they judge that there's no opportunity to take advantage of, so they fled? Well, those people are just the icing on the cake. The key is to catch the immortal beast. Seeing that the white figure in midair was constantly approaching, a smile hung on Tiger King's face. At this point, there was no longer any suspense. The target had fallen into the beast collar's control. Even if those people made a comeback, it would be of no use. Well, the only problem was, that spirit dog that was constantly struggling in mid-air, its fur color didn't seem to be very pure. Chapter 204. When the spirit of the beast collar pulled the whip and brought the bound immortal beast to Tiger King's feet, many of the surrounding elders couldn't believe that things would be so simple. They originally thought that there would be a fierce battle and that this immortal beast cub would cause a lot of trouble for them. But, in the end, things were done just like that. Aside from the moonlight eruption at the Green Lake, which gave everyone a little fright, there was no other outstanding performance. But looking at it from another perspective, this result was normal. No matter how powerful the immortal beast cub was, it was still within the category of spirit beasts. As long as it was a beast, it would naturally be restrained by the Beast Master School. Even immortal beasts were no exception. Of course, if a fully grown immortal beast really came, then the entire Beast Master School would only be a dead end. But, an immortal beast that hadn't even successfully transformed, no matter how strong it was still limited. In particular, this spirit dog that was firmly bound by the whip and was still endlessly struggling, looked a little stupid. That's right, if it was really smart, it wouldn't have shown itself. Using the moonlight of the Green Lake to guide the Emperor Essence seemed like a clever move, but in fact, it was 100% suicidal. Next, please leave a mark on its body as soon as possible, Great Elder. A King Pill Elder promptly advised. Tiger King nodded his head, and with a thought, the spirit of the beast caller used a torch to heat the soldering iron until the tip was red hot. Then, it slowly extended towards the immortal beast on the ground. As long as a slave mark was left on its body, it would never be able to break free. Even if it gradually matured in the future, when its cultivation neared its peak, it would be able to remove the mark on its own, but at that time, there would be a higher level mark waiting for it. The fate that awaited it was to contribute its value in the Beast Master School until its death. Of course, this was also a good thing for it, because in the Beast Master School, it would receive the most rigorous training and display its potential to the limit. Even though it would lose its freedom, it was still much better than living a lonely life on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Under the gaze of many elders, the spirit of the beast caller pressed the red-hot soldering iron on the immortal beast's body, and then, clang! A golden ripple lit up, swinging the soldering iron away from the spirit's hand. The spirit roared in disbelief, "Contract! This is a contract that has already been formed." This immortal beast had already exchanged a contract with someone, so it was no longer ownerless. My slave brand can't be stamped on it. What? All the elders were dumbfounded. They had already exchanged contracts? How could this be? This immortal beast moon spirit should have been formed not too long ago. It was like a newborn baby. Before it was born, it was impossible to exchange a contract, and after it was born, was there such a time window? While the other elders were in disbelief, the Tiger King, who had the worst temper, calmed down instead. Because he remembered what Xia said before. It seemed like those few young cultivators from unknown famous sects finally couldn't help but make their move. To be able to unknowingly come into contact with the moon spirit in advance and leave a contract with it, this move was really amazing. Unfortunately, under the situation where the main premise remained unchanged, these efforts were destined to be futile. Moon spirits couldn't leave without transforming, and if they wanted to do so, they had to go through the beast taming school. And this was a trial that they couldn't pass. What would happen next? But what was the use of leaving such a contract? Could it be that they had to go back to the mountain to find the sect elders and claim that they were the first to get the moon spirit? What a joke, even the people from Shengjing's sect wouldn't be so overbearing, right? Thinking to this, Tiger King wrinkled his brows. Knowing that a long delay could lead to more dreams, he ordered the spirit, quickly remove the contract and stamp it with our mark. However, the spirit said, it's very difficult. This contract is quite advanced. The cultivator who made the contract is a master in contract technology. Humph, no matter what level it is, since it's a beast-taming contract, putting it in front of us is like showing off one's slight skill in front of an expert. Liang Yu, Gong Yang, the two of you assist the spirit to break this contract as soon as possible." While speaking, Tiger King stood up. Unsurprisingly, the other side's real trump card should have appeared. Now's the time. Go." Outside the Full Moon Valley, Wang Lu, who had been waiting for a long time, finally issued an order. Xiao Qi was stunned. "Now? Right now, the other side is clearly waiting for us to walk into the trap, right?" The best time to make their move was when the other side used the beast-taming collar to lock the immortal beast and dragged it to the Crown Cloud Peak. At that time, all of them thought that victory was in their grasp, so their attention was taken by the immortal beast. But now, they discovered that something was wrong and began to be vigilant. "It doesn't matter, believe me," Wang Lu lightly said, and then stepped into the Full Moon Valley. Thanks to the blessing of the 5 mountain broken veins technique, the moment they stepped into the spell range, Wang Lu and the others were directly sent to the middle of the valley, saving them from the pain of climbing the mountain. Of course, their traces could no longer be hidden. If things developed smoothly according to Wang Lu's expectation, Xia would successfully deceive Tiger King with his lie. Then, the appearance of Wang Lu at this time would be completely beyond the expectation of the Beastmaster School. At that time, a moment of shock would be enough for Wang Lu to accomplish a lot of things. However, the development of the matter was unexpected. "Sure enough, you're here. I've been waiting for you for a long time, afraid that you wouldn't come." Tiger King sneered, but before his laughter ended, the Crown Cloud Peak only left an afterimage. In the blink of an eye, this sturdy elder flew down from the Crown Cloud Peak. His pair of tiger claws tore the air, digging out a vacuum passage. While he was flying, he rolled up purple thunder and blue fire, which was like a heavenly tribulation descending upon the Full Moon Valley. In front of his tiger claws, Wang Lu, who had just been transmitted, seemed to have a blank expression. The person who tried to catch him off guard was instead caught off guard. Tiger King inwardly sneered and reduced his strength by more than half, not intending to make a killing move. According to Xia, this young cultivator came from a famous sect. Killing him would certainly give him a moment of pleasure, but there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Of course, he didn't care about any trouble in the future. The problem was, on the body of a cultivator from a famous sect, there would always be a coveted magical treasure. If he tore him apart with his claw, those magical treasures that were bound to him would be destroyed in vain. Tiger King was lenient, but with his Yuanying stage cultivation base, even if he held back most of his strength, the remaining part was enough to break the defense of a King Pill-level cultivator. However, the next moment, when Tiger King's tiger claws were about to pinch Wang Lu's throat, a simple and heavy sword light suddenly greeted it. Bam! The tip of the sword just happened to block Tiger King's palm. Two diametrically opposite magical powers erupted. Tiger King's lightning-like falling momentum was stopped and he tumbled back dozens of meters away. And Wang Lu fiercely sank, sinking more than a meter deep into the ground. However, in addition to that, Wang Lu's sword momentum was not chaotic. The man and the sword united like an unfalling mountain. He blocked it. In mid-air, Tiger King couldn't believe his eyes. A Yuanying stage-level attack was actually blocked by him, a foundation establishment, oh, wrong, a Shudan stage little cultivator. Of course, there were many reasons for this. Tiger King was lenient, and Wang Lu's unexpected counterattack also prevented the Tiger Claw from erupting with its power. However, even so, the gap between Shudan stage and Yuanying stage should not be so easily wiped out. In the Yuanying stage, even if the magical power used was not much, the magical power that came out from the Yuanying stage Jade Mansion would contain the cultivator's own spirituality, and there was an absolute difference in quality. For the same spell, a Yuanying stage cultivator could multiply the power of their spiritual energy. It was like a battle between two armies. On one side, the army was a veteran soldier, while on the other side, it was their first time on the battlefield, and they couldn't even understand the general's flag. The gap in combat power was self-evident. Just now, Tiger King only used 20% of his power, but in theory, even a King Pill level cultivator would have to use 2 to 3 times the magical power to resist. Considering that the total amount of magical power of a Yuanying stage cultivator was more than that of a King Pill cultivator, almost a middle-level King Pill cultivator would be able to resist it with all his strength. Wang Lu was not even a middle-level Shudan, so how did he block it? Tiger King frowned. In a breath's time, his Jade Mansion's Dao heart crazily revolved, replaying everything that happened just now in a split second. Just now, he stretched out his tiger claw, and his 5 fingers were wrapped with the magical power endowed by his two-colored Yuanying. It was like thousands of ferocious tigers that could easily tear an opponent several times bigger than them. However, Wang Lu just simply met his sword, but the magical power of the sword impressively had its own spirituality. Moreover, the quality was very pure, and it was not inferior to the magical power that had been purified by the King Pill. What kind of sacred being was this guy? However, this question would have to wait until he was captured and then slowly interrogated. Just now, it was an accident that his attack was blocked. If he was a little more serious, then. At this time, Wang Lu mockingly smiled. Look behind you. Tiger King was extremely angry. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? With that, lightning curled around his tiger claw, and 10 times the magical power from before gathered together. However, at this time. Whoa! A scream came from the crown cloud peak, which made Tiger King horrified. It was the sound of the spirit of the beast collar. Looking back, a pair of tiger eyes pierced through the clouds of the crown cloud peak, and directly saw the top of the mountain, the huge shadow that made people's hair stand on end. Oh! That was the terrifying howl of a wolf that was enough to disperse the moonlight. The immortal beast Moon Spirit, which was originally bound on the ground and unable to move, had unknowingly turned into a giant beast with a body length of more than 15 meters. Its 2 blood-red eyes emitted an unusually ferocious bloodthirsty gaze. Moreover, blood continued to flow from its 2 rows of sharp teeth. The dull beast collar was lying on the ground, and the dog-faced spirit was swallowed by that giant wolf. Only half of its body was left, rolling on the ground and howling. The 2 King Pill elders who were originally sitting on the side spurted out blood, and their injuries were not light. This. Tiger King was greatly shocked. Where did this giant wolf come from? Could it have transformed from an immortal beast? But just now, it was clearly bound by the beast collar. Not to mention the fact that it had yet to transform, even if it had successfully transformed, with the suppression of the spirit treasure and the 2 King Pill elders, it would not have been able to suddenly break free, and then bite back and seriously injure the spirit. In the midst of his shock, Wang Lu's voice faintly sounded from behind him. The spirit treasure beast collar that you people are so proud of is indeed specialized in restraining dog-type spirit beasts. But, even though I keep calling it a stupid dog, it's not a dog. Chapter 205. Quan Zouhua, of course, was not a dog. How could the mythical-level magical beast from the western continent, the legendary world-destroying demonic wolf Fenrir, be a dog? In fact, most of the immortal beasts had their own unified bloodline. Even if their appearance was similar to other spirit beasts, there was actually a big difference. Let alone, even if Fenrir was really a dog, it was still a western continent dog. Therefore, when the Beast Master School elders thought that they had grasped the spirit dog attribute of the moon spirit, they resorted to the special beast collar and tried to use the dog trainer's whip to restrain the demonic wolf Fenrir, which doomed them to a tragic end. From the beginning to the end, Fenrir was never really suppressed by the beast collar. Although the spiritual treasure level's power still had a certain impact on it, when the opponent was completely unprepared, it was easy for it to suddenly attack and injure the enemy. The spirit of the beast caller itself was not weak. With Fenrir's current infant form, it was still difficult to contend against it. However, if it was the defenseless spirit, then it was another matter. The spirit had no entity, which was extremely difficult to be injured. However, for Fenrir, who specialized in swallowing, its incorporeal form was the most defenseless form. With one bite, half of the spirit's body disappeared forever, never to be reborn again. At the same time, the two king pill elders, whose primordial spirit was connected to the spirit, also suffered a backlash. Their primordial spirit was damaged, and the king pill became dim. As for the demon wolf, it felt an indescribable power filling its body. This sneak attack was really a great nourishment, causing its body to swell several times in an instant, and its ferocious aura overflowed to the heavens. Next, as long as it completely swallowed the artifact spirit, it would obtain an immeasurable amount of growth. However, just as the demon wolf was about to lower its head to swallow the beast-taming collar, a thunderous roar resounded from the crown cloud peak. Evil creature! That huge figure was even faster than the sound. Before the demonic wolf could react, it saw a shadow in front of it. That shadow turned into a tens of meters tall giant, whose claw grabbed its neck. The strength of the claw was very strong. The previously insufferably arrogant demonic wolf was firmly caught. Its four limbs struggled to struggle, but it was useless. A moment later, the wolf's howl turned into a whimper, which was extremely miserable. Sure enough, there is always a higher mountain. No one had expected the Tiger King to act so decisively. When he saw the changes on the crown cloud peak, he did not hesitate at all. He put down Wang Lu and the others and turned to go up the mountain. At that time, he clearly only needed one more move to heavily injure his opponent, but he was unwilling to waste even the time to make one move. How wise! In the full moon valley, Wang Lu slowly withdrew his sword of Mount Kun. Behind him, Lu Li has entered the state of brilliant sword heart, and Shao Qi's monk staff also propped up a piece of Zen light. The Trinity defense system has been formed. Even if Tiger King went all out, it would still be difficult for him to break the defense in one or two moves. However, by delaying one or two moves, Fenrir could calmly swallow the beast collar and then escape. The other party's reaction was faster and more accurate than expected. The impulsive and easily angered Tiger King in the data wasn't that easy to deal with. Looking at the huge figure on the crown cloud peak, Wang Lu chuckled. You have some skill, but it's a pity that it's meaningless in the face of absolute power. Shao Qi could not help but say, absolute power is used too many times. Then how about changing it to mortal wisdom? At the same time, on the crown cloud peak, seeing the mess around him, Tiger King Lei Zhen's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could not wait to directly squeeze this wolf cub into minced meat. However, the immortal beast aura that came from his hand made him unable to do it. Now, it seemed like this demon wolf was naturally not the moon spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, but the immortal beast's grade was about 80 to 90%. At least, it was a quasi-immortal beast, which was priceless. Although the sneak attack on the tool spirit caused the spiritual treasure to be damaged, and the two king pill elders were injured, compared to the value of the immortal beast, it was nothing. Half of the tool spirit's body was swallowed, but as long as it returned to the spiritual treasure space to be nourished for 10 days to half a month, it would recover. The two king pill elders were not even worth mentioning. Even if they died, it wouldn't be a problem. Right now, the most important thing was to completely grasp the demon wolf in his hand and not let it run away. Lei Zhen tightened his grip, and the Yuanying stage magical power began to infiltrate the demon wolf's body. Not only did it place a restriction on its body, but it also gradually converged on the primordial spirit contract, trying to disintegrate the existing contract and replace it with the Beast Master School contract. Thanks to his Yuanying stage cultivation base, his irascible personality allowed him to calmly think of many things in a flash. The grade of this demon wolf was comparable to an immortal beast, and the master-servant contract on the primordial spirit was the work of a grandmaster. Obviously, this was a spirit beast that belonged to a high-rank sect, so plundering it at will would be a great trouble. However, as long as he replaced it with the Beast Master School contract, even if the Beast Master School eventually learned that the immortal beast belonged to Xingjing's sect, they would still dare to confront it. After all, it was a high-rank sect, so the word reason was still somewhat useful. It was just that breaking this contract was a bit exhausting. Tiger King was not good at this kind of exquisite skill, and the two elders who were good at it were still sitting cross-legged in meditation, trying to restore the primordial spirit injury that they just suffered, so they couldn't help even the slightest bit. However, with the Yuanying stage cultivation base, a little bit of grinding would always be able to wear down the contract mark. It would just take a bit more time. Moreover, it just so happened that the several people in the Full Moon Valley thought that they had an opportunity. Looking back at the several people in the Full Moon Valley who were ready to make trouble, Tiger King could not help but shake his head. You think you're smart. The unexpected appearance of the demon wolf did bring some trouble to the Beast Master School, causing an unplanned reduction in manpower. However, Tiger King's arrangement in the Crown Cloud Peak and Full Moon Valley had left him with double the leeway. Even if he was tied up at this time and had no time to spare, the rest of the Beast Master School's manpower was enough to suppress those few juniors who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the face of absolute strength, tricks and intrigues were suicidal. Do it. Along with Tiger King's order, all the cards that the Beast Master School had arranged inside and outside the Full Moon Valley were all turned over. Tiger King simply had no interest in fighting back and forth with the opponent. In the first round, he wanted to completely crush the opponent. 5 King Pill Elders, more than 10 spirit beasts with cultivation base around King Pill, as well as Lei Zhen's pet, the winged tiger whose cultivation base had reached the peak of King Pill. The comprehensive strength of the opponent was more than 10 times that of the opponent. Not to mention that the opponent was only a middle-level King Pill with 2 low-level Shidan. Even if it was a Yuanying stage Daoist master, they would only be able to barely escape, they would not have the capital to fight back. And if coupled with the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, even a Yuanying stage Daoist master would find it difficult to escape. In the Full Moon Valley, the cold wind whistled, the malicious spirits rampaged, and the vortex of Yin Qi formed a tornado barrier under the influence of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Oh, this lineup is really luxurious. In the face of this almost hopeless situation, Wang Lu smiled even more happily. His eyes swept around. In addition to the King Pill Elders and the King Pill level spirit beasts, the hundreds of elite disciples of the Beast Master School were also ready to make a move. Unfortunately, an incompetent general has exhausted the entire army. If you want to blame someone, blame the incompetence of the commander. The next moment, Wang Lu's complexion turned solemn. 7th Madam, release the soul. Shao Qi nodded his head. With a shake of his Buddhist staff, a white-robed Buddhist monk came out from the Buddhist staff and stood side by side with Shao Qi. The white-robed Buddhist monk looked solemn, and his eyes were gentle and devout. As soon as he appeared, he brought along a soft warm wind, dispersing the gloomy and ghostly atmosphere around him. It was the spiritual treasure of the Buddhist staff. After summoning the spiritual treasure, Shao Qi immediately recited the scripture together with him. The woman's voice was no longer frivolous and free as it was in the past. Instead, it became solemn and serene. Each syllable was like a majestic ancient bell, buzzing. This was an introductory Zen scripture that could be found everywhere in the 9 regions, the 6 paths of reincarnation scripture. When Shao Qi and her partner, the spiritual treasure, recited together, it had an inconceivable magical ability. As soon as the scripture was recited, the countless malicious spirits around them shrieked in unison, as if they were suffering from an unbearable pain. However, as soon as these shrieking sounds came, the chilly wind immediately suppressed the light of the Buddhist scripture to a radius of 10 meters around Xiaoqi. The King Pill Elder, who presided over the 10,000 spirits' great array, laughed out loud. What a joke! With just the power of a single person, you actually want to release the soul of thousands of wronged spirits in this valley? Do you think you're Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? Xiaoqi's complexion remained unchanged. She just silently recited the scripture, maintaining the light of Buddhist scripture under the suppression of the 10,000 spirits' great array. Then, Wang Lu took a step forward, right at the intersection between the light of Buddhist scripture and the chilly wind. You must know that a single spark can start a prairie fire. His voice fell in the valley like a substance. The next moment, the hundreds of people inside and outside the full moon valley simultaneously felt the ground shaking. It was as if there were thousands of troops and horses galloping here, and also like the roaring of the Yangtze River. Its momentum was torrential and invincible. This is the resonance of the feng shui vein. The elder who presided over the grand array suddenly panicked. The feedback force from the grand array was so strong that the first vibration almost made him lose control of the grand array. It was as if the entire full moon valley was rebelling against him. With just one step, Wang Lu could actually trigger the resonance of the feng shui vein. What a joke! If he really had that ability, at least he would be a Taoist master of Yuanying stage. Why would he need to play any tricks? Wouldn't it be fine if he just directly used his sword to cut down everyone? However, the fact had happened in front of him, so he couldn't deny it. The elder fully operated the grand array, trying to suppress the rotation of the feng shui vein. However, at this time, he was stunned to find that the feng shui vein of the Grand Cloud Mountain seemed to be much wider than he imagined. Moreover, in addition to the feng shui vein, inside and outside the full moon valley, all living beings were driven by the power of this step and began to silently respond to Xiaoqi's reincarnation scripture. And for the Beast Master School cultivators, it was as if thousands of words were ringing in their ears. The grass and trees around them seemed to have a spiritual nature. Under the leadership of Xiaoqi and the Tool Spirit, they chanted the scripture in unison. Some voices were as tender as a child, some as heroic as a strong man, some as gentle as a woman, and some as vicissitudes of life like an old man. These thousands of voices, each with their own different yearning, but without exception, they were all speaking with sincerity about their resistance to death and their desire to live. Living beings wish. The King Pill Elder was even more horrified. According to the legend, only a person with great virtue and great power could make a great wish and receive the response of thousands of living beings. Although this Zen Master Guru's skill was not weak, he was still far from the realm of great virtue and great virtue. In the end, could it be Wang Lu's doing? Unfortunately, it was already too late to think about it further. Under the response of the living beings in the full moon valley, Xiaoqi's Zen light gradually disintegrated the Yin wind barrier of the grand array, and with her as the core, she opened up a pure land of rebirth. As the Yin wind blew, the resentful spirits dissipated, leaving only a wisp of breeze. The number of ghosts and malicious spirits gathered by the grand array was decreasing at an alarming rate, and the grand array was on the verge of collapse. How could this be? In the full moon valley, the remaining King Pill elders looked at each other and immediately returned to their respective positions. They began to join forces to maintain the grand array. More than 10 spirit beasts roared and rushed to one place, trying to interrupt Xiaoqi's soul rebirth scripture. These spirit beasts were comparable to the strength of the King Pill elders. At this time, they attacked with all their strength, and their power was even more astonishing. However, in the blink of an eye, more than 10 explosive sounds were heard one after another. The spirit beasts uttered painful groans and screams as they were bounced back by an absolute force. Wang Lu propped up his non-phase sword defense and slowly spat out a mouthful of foul air with a strong smell of blood. Behind him, Lu Li was clinging to his back, both of her hands holding his arm, and the two of them were almost as one. Just now, when he launched his non-phase sword, Lu Li simultaneously launched her brilliant sword heart, merging the pure sword intent with Wang Lu's non-phase sword art. Before those spirit beasts pounced on them, they released thousands of sharp sword intents, using offense as defense, forcing the opposite side to retreat a bit at the last moment, greatly reducing their impact. Of course, even if there were some who were not afraid of death and charged at the sword intent of the brilliant sword heart, their strength would be reduced a lot. Therefore, even if more than 10 spirit beasts joined forces, they still could not break the non-phase sword defense. Wang Lu's non-phase method has never been afraid of group fight. The combined force of more than 10 spirit beasts was actually not much more threatening than a single spirit beast. At this time, his defense had reached level 9 Shudan plus 24, which was equivalent to the peak of King Pill stage. And with the help of Lu Li, his defense had gone even further, almost approaching the level of Yuanying stage. Unless there was a true Yuanying stage's full power output, otherwise, no one would be able to break his non-phase sword defense. More than 10 spirit beasts continued to attack. Admittedly, Wang Lu was somewhat in a difficult situation, and he had no time to use his nameless sword to rebound the damage. However, as time went by, Shao Qi's reincarnation Pure Land continued to expand under the suppression of the 5 King Pill Elders, which seemed to be about to break through the lock termination array. A bunch of waste. On the Crown Cloud Peak, Tiger King finally could not hold back and issued a soul-stirring roar. How sharp was the eyesight of a Taoist master of Yuanying stage! At a glance, he could see that the situation in the Full Moon Valley had gone out of control, and a higher-level person had to come forward. And who else but him could there be a higher-level person? Although the demon wolf in his hand has not been completely dealt with, and the contract imprint had only broken through the periphery, at this time, he still had no time to deal with it. However, for a Yuanying stage cultivator, this situation was not difficult to deal with. If the avatar couldn't do it, then he would use the avatar. A purple-red shadow broke out from Tiger King's giant body and flew above the Full Moon Valley. That shadow looked like a smaller version of Tiger King himself. Its surface was covered with purple and red, and there was brilliance flowing inside. Many people exclaimed, "Nascent soul has left its body." When a cultivator reached Yuanying stage, it was like having a second life. Not only in the face of a life and death crisis, a cultivator could abandon their body, let their nascent soul fly away, and then seize another body to be reborn. When needed, they could also take the initiative to separate their nascent soul and use it as an avatar. A single nascent soul, lacking the protection of its body, would appear particularly fragile. However, a cultivator's nascent soul almost had all of his magical power and magical ability. After Tiger King separated his nascent soul, he arrived above the Full Moon Valley and suppressed it with his absolute power. The full power of a Yuanying stage cultivator was on a completely different level. Shao Qi's reincarnation Pure Land was immediately swept back, and his Zen light was compressed by the purple-red light, leaving only a mass of 10 meters in radius. Wang Lu's non-phase sword defense also violently trembled, and black blood overflowed from his mouth and nose. Even with the help of Lu Li, the two of them still could not contend against the pressure of a Yuanying stage. The gap between a Yuanying stage and a real Yuanying stage was as big as an insurmountable gap. Not to mention that Tiger King's nascent soul directly stood at the eye of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, which increased its power a bit. In the face of absolute power, your little tricks are meaningless. Tiger King's nascent soul issued a cold sneer in the air. Try to squeeze out every bit of your potential, so that I can play a bit longer. Tiger King said as he increased the magical power output of his nascent soul. In the Full Moon Valley, it was as if the vault of heaven had sunk. Under the heavy pressure, Wang Lu's sword defense shrank inward, teetering on the verge of collapse. And in the middle of the non-phase sword defense, Shao Qi had stopped reciting the Reincarnation Sutra and retrieved the monk staff spirit. In the face of this level of crisis, she, as his avatar, was powerless. The woman looked up at the sky and sighed with emotion. Absolute strength. Tiger King Lei Zhen, your reputation is well deserved. As the great elder of the Beast Master School Division, in many people's impression, Tiger King was just an ordinary Yuanying stage cultivator. Only when he joined hands with his spirit beast, Winged Tiger, did he have above-average strength. However, now it seemed that this Yuanying stage cultivator with deep accumulation actually hid a lot of his strength. Relying solely on his nascent soul, it was enough to contend against an ordinary 8th-level Yuanying stage cultivator. Therefore, when he boasted about his absolute strength, people really couldn't laugh. Of course, Wang Lu could also laugh at any time. Well-deserved reputation? It won't be long before he'll be immortal. Absolute strength? Ha, I'll let you see what is called absolute strength. As soon as his voice fell, a long horn sound echoed in the distance. At the top of a mountain more than 10 miles away from the Full Moon Valley, cat girl Ling Yan put down the horn that was personally given to her by Wang Lu. Just now, the dull horn sound almost deafened her cat ears. She could clearly perceive the situation in the Full Moon Valley, especially Tiger King Lei Zhen's bloodthirsty magical power fluctuation, which made her hair stand on end. The cat girl was very clear about the crisis that Wang Lu and the others were facing at this time. However, she couldn't understand why Wang Lu previously told her that once she found Tiger King's nascent soul, she must blow this horn. After a moment, the aura around her body changed. The cat girl was startled, and then she stared at the night sky. In the mountain forest, thousands of faint lights lit up. Balls that were shining with all kinds of colors jumped out from the forest, between the rocks, and from the stream. At first, they were slow, but then they were pulled by an invisible force and accelerated little by little. Very soon, they turned into shooting stars and flew into the sky. Looking at the vision around her, the cat girl was keenly aware that those were the spirits of all living things in the mountains. All living things had spirits, and at this time, it was the manifestation of the spirits of all living things. The entire Grand Cloud Mountain was awakened by the long horn sound just now. The spirits of all living things in the mountains converged and flew toward one place. That was the direction of the Full Moon Valley. The so-called absolute strength, in my opinion, is like a subtraction problem. Under the heavy pressure, Wang Lu further shrank his sword defense. The 3 feet sword defense was now less than 3 inches, and it was on the verge of collapse. However, he was still indifferent and unhurriedly explained his understanding of absolute strength. First of all, put out the opponent's strength in full detail. How many Yuanying, how many King Pill, how many Shidon? Then put out our strength, and then begin to subtract. For each of our moves, how much of the opponent's strength can be deducted from each of our characters is calculated one by one. For example, Quan Zouhua can deduct at least 2 of the opponent's King Pill. And Shao Qi, your reborn in the Pure Land, can at least deduct 3 to 4 of the opponent's King Pill. Lu Li and I join hands to wield our swords, which is enough to deduct all of the opponent's minions. Like this calculation, in this subtraction problem, the side with the larger number has the absolute strength. And for me, in the last step of this subtraction problem, as long as I reduce the opponent's nascent soul to the point that it has to leave its body, then I win. Wang Lu unhurriedly said. Although more and more blood gushed out from his mouth and nose, his posture appeared to be more calm. And according to my calculation, even if every step of this battle is not smooth, Quan Zouhua's real body is recognized, Shao Qi's reborn in the Pure Land is difficult to contend against the 10,000 Spirit Lock termination, and Beast Master School still has other hidden cards. As long as it's within a basic reasonable range, I can find a way to subtract the problem to the step that I want. In the full moon valley, Wang Lu's dull voice was particularly grating. However, although there were many people present, no one could stop him. Because everyone saw that within the radius of 500 miles around the Grand Cloud Mountain, the spirits of all living things had risen, and the spirits of all living things had converged into a torrential wave. This force was so powerful. Although the scattered spirits of all living things had too many flaws, such as rough, scattered, unsystematic, and lacking in organization, but there were enough of them, and they were strong enough. Wherever the wave passed, no force could resist it. Tiger King's nascent soul crazily twisted, trying to escape in the air. However, just now, it had locked itself in the 10,000 spirit array's eye. Although it had been temporarily strengthened, and there was also a chilly wind barrier to protect its nascent soul, at this time, it was like spinning a cocoon around itself. Not to mention that when the spirits of all living things converged, the surrounding spiritual energy would surge. Without the protection of the array, the fragile nascent soul would immediately be blown away by the wind and rain. Tiger King was simply in a dilemma. Tiger King only felt that time seemed to have stopped, and every breath had become incomparably long. Only Wang Lu's indifferent voice could be heard, unhurriedly and unhurriedly. Very strange, why can I command the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain? 3 days ago, the mountain spirit entrusted her daughter to me. As the guardian of the next mountain spirit, not only do I have the power to command the mountain spirit, but before its wisdom matures, I am also the regent of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Royal power is not omnipotent, but it is still possible to launch a war on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Fortunately, I have advanced to the Shidon stage, so I can refine the horn with my primordial spirit imprint. Tiger King, your cultivation base is profound, reaching the Yuanying stage, and your subordinates are as many as the clouds. You are much stronger than the few of us combined, but compared to the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain, what do you count for? If your nascent soul and body were not separated, perhaps I would not have a good way to deal with you. But now that you have stepped into the gate of death, in the face of absolute strength, only death awaits you. This move is actually not that big of a deal. Using the spirits of all living things to forcefully charge forward, it can be said to injure 1,000 enemies while injuring oneself 10,000. The Grand Cloud Fairy is too gentle and kind. In any case, she could not bear to see her people suffer such a sacrifice. Therefore, she could only connive at your evil deeds here. But I am different. I am neither gentle nor kind. I believe that short pain is better than long pain. I would rather have the Grand Cloud Mountain cut off one of its own fingers today to thoroughly expel you, this group of viruses and bacteria. Tiger King, the night wind of the Grand Cloud Mountain is cold. Your nascent soul is running around naked, so I am afraid you cannot bear it. Please obediently go to sleep. While speaking, millions of specks of light converged in one place, and the purple-red nascent soul was immediately submerged by this wave, no longer able to emit even the slightest bit of light. Chapter 206. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and arrangements seemed insignificant. For the 15th day of the 7th month, the Beast Master School had been preparing for a whole year. Perhaps most of these cultivators, who spent all their time with spirit beasts, had a rough and straightforward character and were not good at scheming, but their efforts in the Crown Cloud Peak and the Full Moon Valley were also obvious to all. Unfortunately, all of this, after the resuscitation of the spirit of all living things, seemed incomparably small. There was a saying in the immortal cultivation world that man could conquer heaven, but only those who had really seen the power of heaven could understand how ridiculous this was. When hundreds of millions of light spots converged into a sea, it was as if the wrath of heaven had descended. The vast sea of light engulfed everything in the Full Moon Valley. Everyone's mind was blank, as if it had been washed away, unable to think about anything. The direct impact of the spirit of all living things was not strong to the entity. If Tiger King's spirit and body were united, he could completely rely on his powerful body to protect himself. However, his Yuanying had left his body, which was tantamount to walking on the road to death. The impact was only for a moment, but it seemed like a long time had passed. After the momentary collision, hundreds of millions of light spots melted in the golden light of the Emperor Essence. Tiger King's purple-red Yuanying disappeared without a trace, the 10,000 spirit lock termination array in the Full Moon Valley fell apart, and the souls of tens of thousands of spirit dogs also entered the cycle of reincarnation under the impact and washing. Without Tiger King, without the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, the Emperor Essence sprinkled all over the Grand Cloud Mountain, and no one could restrain or stop it. However, the Moon Spirit did not appear in other places. The pure white spirit dog stood silently beside Wang Lu, under the protection of the non-phase sword defense, accepting the baptism of the pure essence of the moonlight. There were hundreds of people in the Beast Master School, but no one dared to come forward to stop it. Although those King Pill elders, as well as the astonishingly powerful spirit beasts, still had the power to fight again, they did not have the will to fight again. Looking at the smiling Wang Lu standing in the valley, the Beast Master School cultivators only felt a bone-chilling coldness from the bottom of their hearts. Although he looked like he had just recovered from a serious injury, and the corner of his mouth had not been wiped clean, but after witnessing the earth-shattering spirit of all living things, who could guarantee that he did not have more cards in his hand? And when Tiger King disappeared, who else had the courage to come forward and carry the battle flag? Time passed slowly. The Beast Master School cultivators gathered near the Crown Cloud Peak, and then watched as Wang Lu and the others recuperated and recovered in the Full Moon Valley. They watched as the immortal beast Moon Spirit, which they had coveted for a long time, transformed bit by bit under the baptism of the Emperor Essence. They even watched as the giant wolf broke free from the shackles, took away the spiritual treasure beast collar, and ran into the Full Moon Valley. Under the protection of Wang Lu's sword defense, the situation was slipping into the abyss step by step. The night of July 15th was longer than anyone had expected. After an unknown amount of time, the golden moonlight in the sky seemed to have slightly dimmed. The spirit of the Beast Master School cultivators shook, thinking that this painful torture had come to an end. However, a moment later, they discovered that it was not the golden light in the sky that dimmed, but the light in the Full Moon Valley had become more intense. The immortal beast Moon Spirit had already absorbed enough Emperor Essence and entered the real transformation stage. The specific process of the immortal beast's transformation was a very valuable observation for many people. Unfortunately, the Moon Spirit that had absorbed the Emperor Essence had covered its body in a thick light, as if it was turning into a cocoon. Wang Lu and the others silently guarded the Moon Spirit's side. It should end here, right? For a time, even Wang Lu felt a trace of exhaustion. Things had indeed ended here, for most people. However, in the eyes of a few people, things had just begun. The place where things happened was on the Crown Cloud Peak. However, it was not on the Crown Cloud Peak, but inside the mountain, in a dark and deep place. Phew, in the dark secret room, there was a weak but rapid gasping sound. The sound was filled with great fear and panic, as if it had just escaped from a life and death situation. However, the sound soon stabilized, and a moment later, the secret room lit up with a light. It reflected the figure of a strong man. The man's whole body was coiled with muscles, and on his neck was a tiger's head. His thick palm was burning with the light of thunder and fire. It was the Tiger King Lei Zhen who should have perished. Just now, Wang Lu used the power of the acting mountain spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain to activate the spirits of all living things. He did not hesitate to break into the 10,000 spirit lock termination array. The layers of defensive spells that Lei Zhen had set up collapsed in an instant. The nascent soul spells and abilities were also weak and powerless under the waves. However, a nascent soul cultivator was still a nascent soul cultivator. Their methods were far more profound than those of ordinary cultivators. Moreover, Tiger King Lei Zhen's temperament was violent and rough, but he was also meticulous. Before the great event of the 15th of July, he had quietly prepared a backup plan. He had set up a small nascent soul receiving array in the secret room of the Crown Cloud Peak. Of course, in the wave of anger of the spirits of all living things, a small array was far from enough to save one's life. Therefore, Tiger King did not hesitate to sacrifice his two natal spirit beasts, the loyal and devoted winged tiger, as well as the shadow tiger that had been hidden for more than 10 years. He used them as a substitute to fight for a moment of respite. Even so, the price he paid was still painful. His nascent soul was seriously injured. In order to fuse his body with the seriously injured nascent soul, he also consumed a lot of his flesh and blood essence. At this time, Tiger King only felt an unprecedented weakness. Although his nascent soul stage was still there, and the purple-red little person in his broken jade mansion was still breathing, but what supported all of this had become extremely fragile. However, as long as there's life, there's always a chance to make a comeback. He, Tiger King Lei Zhen, had experienced countless storms in his life. Although this hurdle was difficult, in the end, he had passed it. Next, he had to rest in this secret room for a few days. After he had restored some of his strength, he would go out of the Crown Cloud Peak to clean up the mess. And at that time, the elders from the Southern Heaven region should have arrived. Although he was quite unhappy with many of the great elders from the Beast Master School when he wanted to separate from the family, he was, after all, the great elder of the Beast Master School. The school would not sit idly by and watch a nascent soul cultivator fall. At that time, as long as he could lower his head, 100 years later, he would still be able to establish a foundation. However, just as he was thinking, a burst of footsteps came from outside the secret room. Tiger King's heart jumped. This secret room was his life-saving card, his real last resort. He had never mentioned it to anyone. Moreover, this place was located in the middle of the Crown Cloud Peak, so who would come here at this time? The light from the thunder and fire in his palm became a bit brighter, illuminating the figure of a person. Tiger King's eyes suddenly became sharper, and the muscles all over his body tightened up. Xia, is that you? The person who came was Xia. This King Pill elder, who not long ago had a tender and sweet relationship with Tiger King, still had his signature smile hanging on his face. Moreover, that smile was quite sincere, as if he had just received joy and moisture. It's me, don't you welcome me? Normally, seeing Xia showing such an expression, Tiger King would naturally welcome him. However, at this moment, Tiger King was not happy at all. How did you know about this place? I've never told you about it. Xia shrugged. That's right. Even if you don't mention it to the person closest to you, as the person closest to you, there are some things that you don't need to say out loud. You can hide it from others by arranging a life-saving array in the Crown Cloud Peak, but you can't hide it from me. Heh, you really are smart. Tiger King coldly smiled. However, if you're smart enough, you should know that there are some things that not knowing is better than knowing. If you turn around now, I can pretend that nothing happened. Xia laughed. You've always been coarse, but you're also meticulous. You're not more stupid than others, so why bother deceiving yourself? Since I'm here, can't you guess what I'm going to do? That won't do you any good. Xia shook his head. No good? Then you really don't know me. With that, he took a step in front of Tiger King, extended his slender arm, and pressed it on the center of Tiger King's forehead. The next moment, Tiger King felt an astonishing suction force coming from the center of his forehead. His head buzzed from this suction force, and his brain seemed to be boiling. What made him even more horrified was that the broken nascent soul in his jade mansion seemed to have been eroded and began to disintegrate further. Moreover, it was pulled out of his jade mansion. What do you want to do? Hee, can't you guess what I want to do? My aptitude in immortal cultivation is not good. My root bone and opportunity are mediocre. The cultivation method given to me by the sect can't be of any use. Because of this, I'm ridiculed as an incompetent waste. However, I'm afraid no one would think that I have the skill of a dove occupying a magpie's nest. Moreover, for today, I've been preparing for more than 10 years. Tiger King coldly said, "You want to seize my nascent soul and body?" Correct. Henceforth, I am Tiger King Lei Zhen, with excellent immortal cultivation aptitude, illustrious sect prestige, and boundless future. While speaking, Xia's smile became more brilliant, and the suction force from his palm also became stronger. It seemed like Tiger King's nascent soul was about to be dragged out from his jade mansion. Tiger King was silent for a moment, and then he opened his mouth with a gloomy voice. "It's useless." Useless? If you don't try, how do you know it's useless? Yes, with my King Pill stage, it's somewhat difficult to inherit your nascent soul's mantle, but... No, I don't mean that. Tiger King said, his voice becoming more and more steady. Even if you take away everything from me, you can't become me. In immortal cultivation, everyone's path is unique. Even if there are 3,000 paths, in the end, what we cultivate is ourselves. If you wholeheartedly focus on external things, hoping to take this shortcut, it will only harm yourself. Ha! Xia sneered. Tiger King said, "I can understand your, shut up." Speaking of understanding, Xia suddenly became excited. Understand? That's ridiculous. I've been cultivating for more than 100 years, and I've been bitterly exploring the bottleneck without being able to move forward. I can only take the unconventional path, even by hook or by crook. This kind of feeling of having no way to go, when have you ever felt it? When those people in the sect laughed at me for selling my ass and licking your toes, when have you ever felt that kind of humiliation? What qualifications do you have to talk about understanding? With that, the suction force increased again. Tiger King was finally unable to resist. His purple-red nascent soul was pulled out and fell into Xia's palm. Xia's eyes were full of greed as he carefully played with this scarred nascent soul. It's really a good thing. If it's a normal cultivation method, I'm afraid I would never be able to cultivate such a nascent soul. No wonder you always boast in my ear that no matter what you want, you're still reluctant to part with this thing. Upon hearing this, Tiger King was stunned. A moment later, he finally laughed wildly. Xia, oh, Xia, since you've said it like this, I won't say any more. Whatever you want, just take it from me. I've suffered this calamity, so it's difficult for me to shelter you from the wind and rain. Thus, my cultivation base, my body, my method, and everything else are all here for you to take as you please. I just hope that in the future, you won't regret today's arrogance. Regret? How could I regret? This is my only chance. If I can't grasp it, I'll regret it. However, looking at what you've done for me in the past few years, I'll give you a chance to live. With that, Xia laughed several times and closed his palm. Tiger King's nascent soul was suddenly extinguished, but Xia's eyes emitted a purple-red light. After a while, Xia's eyes dimmed, and his whole body lost its vitality, motionless. However, Tiger King's body slightly trembled. He opened his eyes, which were suffused with a faint light. What a powerful force! Is this the world of Yuanying stage cultivators? Obviously seriously injured and dying, yet it's more powerful than when I'm healthy. Tiger King lightly said. His voice was a bit weird. Obviously, he was still not used to his newly mastered power. In front of him, Xia also moved a bit. When he opened his mouth, his voice sounded old and weak. Congratulations, you finally got what you wanted. Got what I wanted? This can't be considered as getting what I wanted. There's one more thing that if I don't do it, it can't be called perfect. With that, the burly giant suddenly threw the thin man to the ground and tore off his pants. You! Hee, Lei Zhen, oh Lei Zhen, in your whole life, you've been stabbing people, but this is the first time you've been stabbed. Now, I'll let you feel what I've been through in the past decades. Tell me, are you happy? Amidst his laughter, his burly body began to slowly sway. So this is how Tiger King feels, so that's how it is, so that's how it is. Ha ha ha, it's really refreshing, really refreshing. With the acceleration of his movement, Tiger King's voice became more and more excited. However, a moment later, his laughter came to an abrupt end. Because the body below him was actually stiff and motionless. When he stretched out his hand, it had already bitten its tongue and committed suicide. Humph, I thought you're a man, but you can't even stand a blow, really ridiculous. The burly man stood up in disappointment and kicked the body away, without any reluctance. Now, let me clean up the mess for you. Humph, I wonder if that immortal beast has transformed yet? After the burly man's figure left the secret chamber, there seemed to be a smile hanging on the face of the curled-up corpse. Chapter 207. When Wuxia reappeared on the crown cloud peak with the identity of Tiger King, less than half a day had passed. The once-in-60 years phenomenon of Emperor Molasses has just ended. The golden light gradually dissipated, and the early morning sun hung on the horizon. On the crown cloud peak, hundreds of Beast Master School disciples and 10 King Pill elders gathered together. Regarding the current situation, they couldn't come to a consensus and quarreled endlessly. Elder Gong Yang, what should we do now? Several disciples surrounded an elder. Their eagerness and hesitation were clearly expressed in their words. This elder Gong Yang was usually deeply trusted by Tiger King. Except for Wuxia, that kind of special case, he could be regarded as the second in command here. Now that the Beast Master School Division suffered a major setback, naturally, someone would turn to him for help. Unfortunately, Elder Gong Yang was also too busy to take care of himself. When he was presiding over the beast collar, he was sneak attacked by Fenrir, and the King Pill was almost broken into 2 halves. At this time, he didn't have enough time to adjust his breathing, so how could he stabilize the morale of the troops and point the way forward for the confused disciples? Although the several elders who were not injured were full of vigor, they had different opinions. They just kept on quarreling, but no one could come up with a practical and effective solution. If you ask me, we should gather everyone's power to fight him again. I don't believe he can still launch the spirit of all living things. Previously, he was suppressed by Great Elder's nascent soul, so his injury is not light. Moreover, he has no time to heal, so how could he still have any fighting power? Humph, if you have the ability, then do it yourself. Since you think he has no fighting power, then what are you, a dignified high-level King Pill elder, waiting for? The opponent is only in shoot on stage, you should be able to take him down in 2 or 3 moves. Surnamed Lu, are you scared? I'm just smarter than you. The other side dared to let the immortal beast transform in front of us, so obviously, he has enough weight in his card. How could we only look at his surface cultivation? Even Great Elder was killed by him. Do you think you're more brilliant than Great Elder? F***CKU, Liang Yu. The Great Elder has always been good to you. After he died, you didn't even think about avenging him. Instead, you just want to find an excuse to shrink your balls. Do you even deserve to call yourself a man? It is precisely because the head elder is dead that we have to be even more careful. We have to preserve the strength of the beast-taming school. You two don't have to fight amongst yourselves. If the head elder... A gold core realm elder spoke halfway and abruptly stopped, because in his line of sight, an inconceivable figure appeared. Heh, who do you think died? The noise in the hall quieted down in an instant. Several hundred pairs of bewildered eyes turned towards one direction, locking onto the tall and sturdy man, locking onto the tiger's head. Great Elder. Lord Tiger King. Brother Lei Zhen. In a split second, countless cries of surprise blended together. Everyone watched in disbelief as the person who should have been dead appeared in front of them. Even though they could see that he was weak and injured at this moment, his unique mana fluctuation ignited the confidence in everyone's hearts. Sure enough, you're still alive. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. One of the elders sighed with emotion. His face was practically covered with tears. Just now, several hundred people were quarreling in the hall. Each voice was louder than the last, and even the sand and stones rustled down. It was not because they were excited to fight, but because they were using this method to cover up the panic in their hearts. Gong Yang, Liang Yu, and the other elders could not hold the scene, the disciples were at a loss, and the rest of the King Pill elders each had their own plans. Some of them even had the idea of surrendering to the young Shudan. Without the stabilizing force to suppress the situation, the several hundred people of the beast-taming school would fall apart. Humph, you bunch of wastes. Compared to the past, this long-lost scolding voice was a bit less domineering, but to everyone's ears, it was like the sound of nature. They only felt a surge of warmth in their hearts, and they no longer felt indecisive and uneasy. This was the role of the great elder, Tiger King Lei Zhen. With just one sentence, he could end everyone's dispute and stabilize the morale of the army. Great Elder, what should we do next? Elder Gong Yang struggled to raise his breath and ask the question that was in everyone's heart. Humph, do you still need to ask me? Have you forgotten the rules of the beast-taming school? Someone came to our door and ruined our painstaking efforts for more than a year. They snatched the immortal beast Moon Spirit and injured many disciples and spirit beasts. Even I was ruthlessly tricked by them. Do you think we can just let it go? Tiger King said and then sneered. His laughter was filled with killing intent. A tooth for a tooth, double it. Everyone was both shocked and gratified. Sure enough, it was the Tiger King, the great elder who had a rough character but could shelter people from wind and rain at any time. However, although they were gratified, they could not relax their vigilance. Elder Liang Yu, who had always been cautious, reminded, Sir Tiger King, those people have been unscrupulously standing in the full moon valley all night. Although it may be a deliberate decoy, they most likely have a particularly powerful card up their sleeves. You must be careful. Careful? It's ridiculous. My yuanying had left my body, so I was reckless. The so-called careful is just an excuse for you to find for your own cowardice. With that, Tiger King no longer paid attention to the hesitation of the elders and disciples. He turned around and walked toward the direction of the full moon valley. People looked at the gradually fading back of Tiger King. Although they were inevitably embarrassed when they were reprimanded for cowardice, their fighting spirit that had long been extinguished has been rekindled. As long as the great elder Tiger King was there, they would certainly be invincible. However, no one could see that the great elder, who was walking in the front, had an irrepressible smile on his face. Sure enough, no one could see it. Some of the elders and disciples in the lobby had been with Tiger King for decades, yet none of them were able to find out that the content of the same body has been completely changed. Of course, from another point of view, Xia, who had completely abandoned his own king pill and body, after taking away Tiger King's body in yuanying, was not much different from his original self. For this day, Xia had been preparing for more than 10 years. Tiger King's character has long been deeply imprinted in his mind, even the most detailed parts were not missed. When he was determined to play the role of Tiger King, he was really no different from his original self. No, compared to his original self who did everything smoothly and didn't know the sinister side of human nature, Xia, who was well versed in the way of survival, was confident that he could do better. For example, in the present situation, if it were the original Tiger King, he would probably have to swallow his anger, or even perish together with the opponent. However, he was different. In his hand, he held 2 cards that were enough to determine the outcome of the battle. After taking over the role of Tiger King, he would use these 2 cards to create a brilliant victory as the prelude. The next moment, he forcibly extracted the magical power from his Yuanying in his Jade Mansion, which turned into a pair of cloud-riding wings, and then flew toward the Full Moon Valley. In the Full Moon Valley, the transformation of the immortal beast Moon Spirit has reached the final moment. The golden cocoon of light flickered, and with the alternating light and dark, it expanded and contracted, like a beating heart. A brand new breath of life was brewing inside the cocoon of light. Although it has yet to complete the crucial step of breaking out of the cocoon, the surging energy contained within it was still alarming. It was indeed worthy to be called an immortal beast. In the legend, as long as it was idle and waited for death, it would have the strength comparable to a true immortal in its mature stage. Compared to it, even the 2 peerless geniuses, Wang Lu and Lu Li, seemed slightly overshadowed. Just waiting for it to break out of the cocoon. Wang Lu had already prepared the heavenly talisman. Once the Moon Spirit transformed, he would immediately launch the heavenly talisman to bring the Moon Spirit back to the mountain. Compared to the immortal beast, the value of this mere heavenly talisman was not worth mentioning. As for whether the Moon Spirit was willing or not, as its guardian, he could completely ignore it. Of course, before launching the heavenly talisman, he still had to do the necessary superficial work. His sword of Mount Kun was still slanted forward, and his magical power output was never interrupted. This non-phase sword defense had been maintained for most of the night, showing the endurance of his non-phase method. Beside him, Lu Li also didn't slack off. Her brilliant sword heart's clear physique allowed her to obtain great benefits from the Emperor Essence. Her just-reached shoot on stage, and her slightly unstable primordial spirit was once again tempered, making it even more marvelous. Lu Li integrated her brilliant sword heart into her non-phase sword defense, and her magical power and sword intent also maintained for most of the night, yet she didn't seem tired at all. In addition, dog-meat gluttonous Master Shao Qi, Quan Zouhua, and cat girl Ling Yan, all surrounded the cocoon of light, each on guard. This group of people assumed the posture of ready to fight at any time, which instead ensured their safety for most of the night. However, this was the end of their peaceful life. In the sky above the Full Moon Valley, a dense mass of people appeared. Under the leadership of Tiger King, the cultivators of the Beast Master School Division came out in full force, assuming the posture of fighting to the death, full of fighting intent. When they saw that tiger head elder, everyone was taken aback. Even Wang Lu curiously asked, "Do you believe in Brother Chun?" It wasn't that they didn't expect that the other party might not be dead, but after narrowly escaping death just now, he couldn't wait to die again, which made people have to doubt the problem. Tiger King was lucky enough to escape, but he was seriously injured and had no power to fight again. Anyone could see this. However, at this time, he stood at the front of the team, with quite a bit of style of courting death. However, before Wang Lu could say anything, Tiger King's voice reverberated in the valley. "You didn't expect me to come back, did you? This is the end of your mystifying tricks." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu didn't want to say anything. "Want to fight to the death? Fine, then let's fight." Although his injury had healed, and his magical power, energy, and primordial spirit were all at their peak, he felt an unprecedented fatigue. From the beginning to the end, he had been the one planning, executing, and shouldering the burden of this battle. He had shouldered all the burdens by himself, and the pressure was far greater than anyone could imagine. This battle had gone on for too long, and it was time to put an end to it. Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, the most threatening nascent soul cultivator had been crippled. Now, apart from standing at the front as a spiritual leader, he could only play the role of a cheerleader when the battle started. The ones who could actually fight were the King Pill elders and the spirit beasts. However, as long as he and little Liuli could cooperate well, an opponent of the King Pill level was no big deal. Even if he couldn't beat them, couldn't he just hold on? As long as he held on until the moon spirit finished its transformation, the heavenly talisman would flash and leave, and what could they do to him? However, just as Wang Lu was about to raise his sword to face the final battle, an ominous feeling flashed in his heart. When he raised his head, his eyes met Tiger King's. However, in those purplish-red eyes, a completely different look flashed. That wasn't the Real Tiger King. Wang Lu's intuition told him so. However, no matter who he is, it's all the same anyway. Wang Lu said tiredly. The next moment, he read a hint of mockery in the other party's eyes. You finally fell into my trap. Wang Lu seemed to hear the other party's ridicule. Subconsciously, he turned around and saw Lu Li beside him. Just behind Lu Li, the cat girl Ling Yan silently approached him. With half bewilderment and half panic, she deeply pierced the strangely shaped dagger in her hand into Lu Li's back. Chapter 208. No matter how professional an adventurer was, there would always be a time when he failed. In this world, there was no omniscient and omnipotent God, only conscientious and diligent cultivators. In a trance, these two sentences emerged in Wang Lu's mind. He couldn't remember where he saw it, but for a long time, Wang Lu regarded it as his own code of conduct. He often used unconventional moves, often used risky moves, and often used God's unfolding method to refresh other people's worldview. However, as far as he was concerned, he was very serious about everything, and would never fight a battle that he was not sure of. Including this time's fight in the Full Moon Valley, in addition to confirming his absolute strength through the subtraction problem, even when Tiger King withdrew and the general situation was already set, Wang Lu still maintained enough vigilance. This kind of full concentration was the key to his success. However, even a wise man would make a mistake. On the eve of a great victory, the taut bowstring slightly loosened, revealing an insignificant but fatal flaw. He should have thought of it. If there was anyone worthy of his special attention in this Full Moon Valley battle, it would be the Yuanying stage Tiger King, Lei Zhen, who was ranked first. Closely following him was not the number 2 figure of the division, Elder Gong Yang, nor was it Tiger King's right-hand man, but a Xia. Wang Lu had never underestimated the destructive power of that abnormal cultivator. A Xia was indeed a waste in the immortal cultivation path, and his ability to play tricks was not as good as Wang Lu, a professional adventurer. However, in a careful layout, he was likely to become an unpredictable variable. Because he was abnormal enough, twisted enough, and cruel enough. In fact, when Wang Lu summoned the spirits of all living things to defeat Tiger King, he spent a lot of time to figure out a Xia's movement. He didn't think that a Xia would be silent from the beginning to the end. In such a big scene, he would certainly be eager to join in, but he never saw a Xia appear. Perhaps this was indeed Wang Lu's lack of luck. If a Xia could complete the possession a few moments earlier, suppress his injury, and come out from the belly of the Crown Cloud Peak to clean up the situation, perhaps he would have caught up with Wang Lu's vigilance. At that time, as long as Wang Lu found an anomaly and intuitively guessed a Xia's identity, he would immediately think that when a Xia appeared, the cat girl would immediately become the biggest unstable factor. Wang Lu did not doubt the sincerity of the cat girl, nor did he doubt Lu Li's sword intent. However, he also did not doubt a Xia's control over his slave. Ling Yan had been trained by him for decades, how could it be so easy to get rid of a Xia's control? Perhaps the slave imprint could be isolated with the brilliant sword heart, but how could the shadow that had accumulated in the depths of the cat girl's heart for decades be so easily removed? Obeying to a xia had become an instinct. When that instinct broke out, the line of defense formed by the brilliant sword heart would be the first to collapse. It was not that a xia used any means to regain control of the cat girl, but rather, the cat girl couldn't help but fall into the other party's control. If they didn't meet face to face, everything would be fine. However, once the two of them met face to face, the cat girl was likely to break out. Because of this, Wang Lu sent her to blow the horn before the decisive battle in the Full Moon Valley. Only when the overall situation was settled did he let her return with the horn. After all, the strength of the king pill level was worth using. This layout was already cautious enough, but unexpectedly, there was still a flaw. When the cat girl helplessly stabbed the dagger into Lu Li's body, Wang Lu knew that the worst possibility had become a reality. The accumulation of excessive exhaustion in his brain was swept away in an instant. Although he couldn't stop all this in time, Wang Lu still responded with the fastest speed. He completely ignored the cat girl Ling Yan, and also ignored the suddenly seriously injured Lu Li. Instead, he stepped forward and aimed at a xia in the sky. The cat girl Ling Yan didn't mean to hurt people. After that blow, she fell into confusion, but because of this, even Lu Li didn't notice this sudden change. Quan Zhuhua, after a moment of consternation, slowly recovered and bit off the cat girl's 2 hands. During this time, the cat girl didn't respond at all. Before the decisive battle in the Full Moon Valley, Wang Lu had told Quan Zhuhua that once the cat girl had a problem, the first thing to do was to take away her ability to move and leave her alive. The rest was not necessary. As for Lu Li's injury, it was indeed very serious, but not immediately fatal. First, the cat girl's instinctive hesitation and confusion made it difficult for her to go all out. However, Lu Li was in a fighting state, so she was not defenseless. It was just that she was caught unprepared by the sudden change. She was good at attack but not good at defense. Secondly, Shao Qi's Zen cultivation was best at healing the wounded and dying. With her around, there was no need for Wang Lu to meddle in other people's business. Thirdly, from a xia's point of view, a living Lu Li was far more beneficial to him than a dead Lu Li. Before seeing the dark green dagger in the cat girl's hand, Wang Lu had speculated that the other party wouldn't directly seek to kill Lu Li, but would likely use poison, the kind that could bite the heart and rot the bones but was not immediately fatal. After Lu Li was poisoned, the other party could use the antidote in her hand to ask for a sky-high price. In this regard, there was only one correct response, which was what Wang Lu was doing now. He drew out the magical power from his jade mansion and turned it into a light body spell. With a step, he flew toward the sky like a meteor, straight toward a xia. To catch a thief, first catch the king. As long as he could catch a xia, anything would not be difficult to solve. Not to mention that Lu Li was seriously injured, the most taboo was a long delay, and a dream would come. In normal times, this group of Beast Master School's miscellaneous troops would not enter Wang Lu's eyes. However, now that the cat girl had betrayed him, Quan Zhuhua suppressed the cat girl, and Shao Qi was healing Lu Li, they almost had no fighting power. Even if he used his non-phase sword defense to prop up his defense, in front of so many King Pill elders, it would be inevitable that he would reveal a flaw. Not to mention there was still a xia, who he could not take lightly. Therefore, the correct approach was to turn the tables, preemptively strike to gain the initiative, and then take down the opponent's biggest variable. It was unknown what kind of mentality a xia had, but he openly stood in the front of the team, creating an excellent condition for Wang Lu. Otherwise, if he were to hide in the encirclement of the King Pill elders, Wang Lu, who specialized in non-phase method, might not be able to easily get in front of him. Of course, although all of the above reasons were valid, there was only one thing that really drove Wang Lu to respond in the first instance: anger. When Luli fell beside him in a daze, Wang Lu, who always liked to put a lot of things in his mind, suddenly had his mind go blank. When he came back to his senses, his body had involuntarily taken a step forward, and his body had accumulated enough power to soar to the sky. His line of sight was blood red, as if he was in a sea of fire. His chest was also burning with pain from the nameless fire. In his mind, there seemed to be a swelling force colliding in all directions, as if it was about to explode. It had been many, many years since he experienced such pure anger. Even if he himself was injured, there wouldn't be too much emotional fluctuation. However, Luli was different. She was Wang Lu's reverse scale. This time, going north to Cloud region was actually Wang Lu's task. However, Luli followed him all the way, always at his beck and call. Whatever he asked her to do, there was no discount. This kind of unreserved trust, at the same time, also meant a great responsibility. Wang Lu was her senior brother, so he had the responsibility to protect his junior sister. He specialized in defense, so he also had the ability to shoulder his own responsibility. It was precisely because Luli trusted Wang Lu that even when she entered the combat state and activated her brilliant sword heart, she didn't waste too much energy on self-protection. Because she believed that no matter what danger she encountered, her senior brother could help her block it. Unfortunately, Wang Lu made a mistake. Although it was only a trivial delay in reaction, it still led to a bad result, betraying his junior sister's trust. This fact was the biggest driving force for Wang Lu's action. Non-phase method didn't have the healing ability, and during the fight, Wang Lu also didn't have the healing instinct. Therefore, when anger filled his heart, his first reaction was to kill. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lu had already soared to the sky and arrived in front of Xia. His speed was so fast that many of the King Pill sect elders were surprised. Only Xia was still leisurely floating in mid-air, as if he didn't see the oncoming Wang Lu, and didn't see the burning anger in his eyes. "Stop pretending, you can't hurt me." Xia shook his head and smiled. His heart was overflowing with pride. Wang Lu's momentum seemed fierce, but in his eyes, it was tantamount to a cornered dog jumping over a wall. Because. How could you have the ability to hurt people, my master Wang Lu? Buzz. Sure enough, Wang Lu's momentum came to an abrupt halt. The moment before he collided with Xia, the distance between them was less than 3 feet. Beside Xia, dozens of Beast Master School cultivators surrounded Wang Lu, but they weren't in a hurry to make their move. Seeing that the situation was settled, Xia smiled proudly. "Do you wonder why I can recognize that you're not Yu Lu, but Wang Lu? Do you wonder why I know that you're only good at defense but can't hurt people?" After a pause, Xia carefully observed Wang Lu's reaction. Unfortunately, he didn't see any change on his face. However, it didn't matter. Xia forcibly suppressed his ecstasy and revealed the answer himself. "Actually, I really want to ask you, a successor disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. A few years ago, you made such a big name for yourself, and your defensive method shocked everyone. Now, as long as you're knowledgeable, seeing a young cultivator with a low cultivation base but specializing in defense, you'll inevitably be associated with you." Of course, it wasn't as easy as it sounded. 9 regions was so big that talented cultivators and miraculous battle cases emerged one after another. Except for those professionals who sold information for a living, it was very difficult for ordinary people to grasp so many details. Young age, specializing in defense, able to challenge people with a higher cultivation base. This kind of person could be casually found in the thousands. Xia didn't determine the identity of the other party based on this. However, saying so was the best way to deal a blow to the other party's morale, making the other party feel that everything was under his control. His fighting spirit would turn pale, and then he would be at the mercy of others. Moreover, the fact was that Wang Lu was restricted by the big heart demon oath, so he couldn't use a mortal method to hurt people. Although he had a few flexible means, it was only when his side made the first move that he could rebound the damage. Would his side make the first move? Of course not, therefore. However, in the next moment, a fist heavily smashed onto his face, and all his thoughts were completely obliterated. The fist wasn't heavy, but the burning power of the fist actually burned his internal organs, causing him to spit out blood on the spot. What kind of fist is this? Raging fire fist? Burning heart fist? Or, no, how could he hurt me? He was restricted by the big heart demon, how could he hurt me? What about the big heart demon, why didn't he kill him? Since he violated the oath, he should die without a doubt. Why didn't he let him die? The next moment, Wang Lu's faint voice came into his ears. This is the injury you gave me, and now, I'm paying it back double. The second heavy punch fell on his face. Xia felt as if he was in a sea of fire. The injuries that his body had been suppressing almost burst out. While he was seriously injured, a light flashed in Xia's mind, and an inconceivable thought jumped out. Could it be that sadness is also an injury? Chapter 209. Whether sadness was part of the injury or not, Xia had no time to think about it. Purely in terms of damage, although Wang Lu's 2 punches were heavy, they were not fatal. What was fatal was the serious injury that was previously suppressed in his body, which was inherited from the original Tiger King. Although Xia's possession was successful, with his King Pill level foundation, he couldn't really utilize the power of Yuanying stage. According to his speculation, without more than 10 years of cultivation, he couldn't even display half of his original strength. Of course, compared to his original body, it was still much stronger. Unfortunately, at least at this time, he was seriously injured. Although he was in Yuanying stage, he couldn't do anything to Wang Lu, who only knew how to swing his fist. After being hit by the 2 punches on his face, Xia's injury broke out. His internal organs were burned, and his huge tiger head almost burst into tears as he staggered back. The Beast Master School elders around him were also shocked and quickly prepared to save him. Various magical power flashed one after another, which almost covered the dawn and shrouded the sky above the full moon valley. Xia turned pale with fright and almost cursed out loud. He hastily waved his hands to stop the stupid behavior of this group of people. Wang Lu was an expert in rebounding damage. These people went all out, did they want to kill him? Right now, what Wang Lu hit him was only his inner emotion. However, if those dozens of spells fell down and were transmitted by the method of resonance, he would really die. From the beginning, Xia didn't expect to be able to defeat his opponent in a head-on confrontation. For the successor disciples from the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, skipping level challenge was a common occurrence. To deal with Wang Lu, he still had to use other means. Don't you want the antidote for Lu Li? This was Xia's trump card. The poisonous dagger in cat girl Ling Yan's hand was given to her by him. Naturally, only Xia himself had the antidote. As long as he threatened the other party with the antidote, he was not afraid that he would not comply. In fact, the more angry Wang Lu was, the more he cared about Lu Li. And the more he cared, the easier it was for him to yield. Unfortunately, Xia really didn't understand Wang Lu. I don't want it. Bam! In Xia's endless consternation, the third heavy punch came. This time, Xia was prepared. He immediately transferred his magical power to fly backward. However, unexpectedly, after being punched twice, his jade mansion was filled with raging flames, and his magical power could not be operated as he wished. He inherited Tiger King's nascent soul and body, and the wind followed the dragon and the tiger followed the wind followed the tiger. He almost instinctively used the wind technique. In a hurry, Xia managed to turn his head. Wang Lu's fist gently brushed past his cheek, and immediately, his ferocious tiger head swelled up. At the same time, Xia felt that in his jade mansion, the purple-black Dao heart that had fused with Tiger King's Dao heart was ignited. In an instant it was burned into a complete mess, and the purple-red Yuanying faintly showed signs of melting. Of Chen to say, to him. Of Xia. Of to Lu. Xia, to the Xia was to say. To of Lu of. Do you think Zen Master Guru can save her? Only I can cure that poison. If you don't take the antidote within 15 minutes, you will die. Idiot. Wang Lu's voice was cold and full of ridicule. After 3 punches, the anger in his heart subsided slightly. Moreover, he could no longer use the burning heart fist. Unlike Xia's imagination, sadness couldn't simply be regarded as a kind of injury. At this time, Wang Lu used the resonance ability of the nameless sword to guide the Jade Mansion's fire to the opposite party, which was actually a very subtle edge ball. The great vow of the heart demon did not allow anyone to touch the edge. The object that Wang Lu was restricting, as well as the person that he was supervising and restricting, were all himself. No deceptive tricks on the surface of cognition could hide from his own heart. Moreover, as a form of self-restraint, the great vow of heart demons was a zero-sum game. The reward of the vow came precisely from the restraint. At the same time that he lied to himself, even if he didn't trigger the punishment of his inner demons, he would lose the reward that the oath gave him. Even if it was just an edge ball, it would greatly shake the great vow of heart demons. In Wang Lu's life plan, the existence of the great vow of heart demons was extremely necessary. Therefore, if he wanted to satisfy both sides, there was only one way: to calmly accept the fact that he had touched the edge ball, and also calmly accept the punishment of his inner demons. If the inner demons wanted to take his life, then he would burn his life as a sacrifice to the inner demons until he was satisfied. Of course, life was precious and fragile. Directly igniting the life was a suicidal path. Therefore, Wang Lu chose the path of compensation. Innate vitality is really a good thing. Wang Lu secretly sighed with emotion. If it weren't for his master teaching him this little trick, he really wouldn't be able to resist the great vow of heart demons and take the initiative to hurt the enemy. However, it was no wonder that before he went down the mountain, his master had solemnly exhorted him, using innate vitality to touch the edge ball is fine, but you must not directly break the vow, otherwise, it would be a dead end. It was indeed a dead end. Just now, he had thrown out 3 punches in succession, and each punch had 10 years of his lifespan taken away by the inner demons. The binding force of the great vow of heart demons was so appalling. Just by touching the edge ball 3 times, he had to pay the price of 30 years of his lifespan. If he directly broke the vow and brandished the sword of Mount Kun like a wandering dragon, the leaf fire and the weak water would shine on each other. Perhaps, with just one strike, Wang Lu's current several hundred years of lifespan would be squandered away. However, in Wang Lu's view, the price of 30 years was still very cost-effective. Of course, it was not about seriously injuring Xia. For this kind of trash creature, spending 3 moments would be a waste. Instead, it was about using 30 years of lifespan as the price to extinguish the inner fire in his jade mansion and leave an unforgettable mark. Just now, when Lu Li was seriously injured, the non-phase immortal heart in Wang Lu's jade mansion crazily operated, and a blood-red flame flowed out from it, burning everything in the jade mansion. That was the authentic inner demon fire. Because of Wang Lu's great vow of heart demons, once he faced a great emotional fluctuation, it was possible to draw out this kind of demonic fire that was comparable to the heavenly fire. After Wang Lu's 3 punches quelled the sea of fire, his jade mansion soon restored its calm. However, on the surface of his non-phase immortal heart, a black mark that was difficult to eliminate was left. Of course, if it had to be eliminated, there would always be a way. However, Wang Lu wanted to keep it, so that he could always remember this lesson at the cost of 30 years of his lifespan. A professional adventurer was indeed very powerful, but it was still far from being omniscient and omnipotent. A little bit of carelessness, and he couldn't even protect the people around him who were worthy of his attention. Wasn't it good to have this kind of understanding? As for the poison in Lu Li, that was another problem. After 3 punches, Wang Lu's mood calmed down. Feeling the change in Wang Lu, Xia was like a drowning man grasping at straws. Thinking that he had found a chance to survive, he hastily opened his mouth to say, "Do you think that just because you came from one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, you can run amok in 9 regions? You elite disciples all have life-saving elixirs given by your elders, which can detoxify thousands of poisons. However, my devouring heart-rotting bone poison is not among the common thousands of poisons. It's not that easy to detoxify it. Moreover, I have the famous brilliant sword heart physique. Once I'm poisoned, the poison will immediately spread to the whole body. Without my help, Lu Li would undoubtedly die." As if to echo Xia's roar, Shao Qi's slightly hurried voice came. "Wang Lu, Lu Li's poison has been detoxified." Huh? Xia was stunned for a long time, and then he furiously said, "You want to trick me? It's not that easy. You're just a king pill cultivator, yet you want to detoxify the devouring heart-rotting bone poison, you." While speaking, his tiger eyes looked down and saw Zen Master Guru and another bald man standing side by side, emitting a soft Zen light that surrounded Lu Li. The girl was indeed seriously injured. Her face was pale, but the pitch-black gas of the devouring heart-rotting bone poison was nowhere to be seen. This poison seemed to have been detoxified. Impossible. Xia's eyes almost popped out. Cat Girl Ling Yan's poisonous dagger was an ancient weapon with thousands of years of history that he obtained after experiencing an extremely rare immortal opportunity. The poison's effectiveness had declined a lot compared to its peak, but its strong point was its strange toxicity, which was completely different from the common poisons in the 9 regions. Even if a sect like the 10,000 Poison School wanted to detoxify it, it would be a bit troublesome. She was just an unknown Zen master. How could she detoxify it? In Xia's deduction, the only way for Wang Lu to survive was to activate the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman, immediately bring everyone back to Spirit Sword Mountain, and let the sect elders come forward to suppress the poison. However, after the Heavenly Talisman was launched, although Wang Lu, Lu Li, and Quan Zouhua could go, Immortal Beast Moon Spirit and Zen Master Guru couldn't. They didn't leave their mark on the Heavenly Talisman, so they weren't sent away. At that time, even if they couldn't catch Wang Lu, they could still catch the Moon Spirit. However, now that the biggest trump card had actually failed, Xia's shock could be imagined. You want to know the principle? It's very simple. It's not that you underestimated the power of Shao Qi's detoxification, but you misjudged Lu Li's poison resistance. Wang Lu said. Because his mood was relaxed, he explained a bit more. It's a wise move not to set me as the target. Although that dagger is a spiritual object, it's a dead object. Although the poison is fierce, it has no vitality. Even if it stabs me, my own poison resistance can solve most of the poison. However, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart has a clear physique, so in theory, her poison resistance is close to 0. Once the poison breaks out, even if the sect elders make a move, it would be very troublesome. However, although she has too many weaknesses, her poison resistance is the only one that's still worth looking at. While speaking, Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. That idiot is greedy by nature. When she sees something novel, regardless of whether it's dangerous or not, she still wants to put it in her mouth. Moreover, she completely has no memory. In that peaceful place on the mountain, she has repeatedly been poisoned by food, so she has to always carry the elder's antidote pill with her to prevent her from dying prematurely. A few years ago, she went down the mountain for experiential learning for a year. She wrote the experiential learning report as a food diary, which made the elders furious. However, behind the diary is the bitterness of tasting tens of thousands of poisons in dozens of countries in the Blue River region. Do you think the sentence in the diary, "Today, I ate sweet tofu pudding, meat dumplings, I feel very uncomfortable"? How much crisis and pain do you think is hidden behind it? Surviving in such experiential learning, how high do you think her poison resistance is? After a pause, Wang Lu looked at the ashen-faced Xia with a sneer. Therefore, using poison to plot against Lu Li, you're really courting death. Before his voice fell, he heard Shao Qi anxiously and angrily urged, "Don't waste time." Although her poison has been eliminated, the damage caused by the instantaneous attack of the poison can't be offset. Her situation is still very dangerous. I can barely suppress it from worsening, but she's not completely out of danger. Quickly deal with the problem and come back to help me. I know. With that, Wang Lu withdrew his fist and brandished the sword of Mount Kun. His eyes turned cold and firmly locked on Xia. The idle talk is over. It's time to send you on your way. Chapter 210. Enough with the idle talk. It's time to send you on your way. When Wang Lu lifted the sword of Mount Kun, this thick and simple sword exuded a cold aura like the 9th level of the abyss, which made Xia's body quivered. That was the sword spirit Autumn Beam's anger. Xia used a despicable means to simultaneously plot against the cat girl Ling Yan and Lu Li. Autumn Beam, who had always been on good terms with Lu Li and sympathized with the cat girl, was already boiling with anger. At this time, with Wang Lu's Shudon stage cultivation base, the spiritual treasure's seal was only left with the last 2 layers, thus its power was greatly released. Autumn Beam didn't even need to show her true form. Her anger alone was enough to make Xia's blood run cold. In theory, if there was enough magical power support, a spiritual treasure with a high enough level could fight alone. Moreover, its fighting power was not low. Therefore, seeing that Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kun was eager to try, Xia's panic increased. Is this guy planning to sacrifice his spiritual treasure to avoid the big heart demon oath? Then, as long as he blocked the other elders, the spiritual treasure sword of Mount Kun could fight me alone. If it was the Real Tiger King, perhaps he wouldn't be afraid of the threat of a low-level spiritual treasure, but he was. Not to mention that he was seriously injured and unable to move. Even if his injury was healed, his ability was far from being able to bring out 1/10 or 2/10 of this body's power. If he encountered a full-strength sword of Mount Kun, he would die without a doubt. Thinking of this, Xia became even more terrified. His biggest trump card had failed. He was almost doomed to come here complacently, but he would have to return with no face. Even if he could come back alive, it was still a different matter. Fortunately, he was cautious by nature. Before he made his move, he would definitely prepare a lot of cards. Now, he had to take out the card that had been lying in ambush for the longest time and had the biggest side effect. Wang Lu, you can't kill me. Because it will dirty my hands? It doesn't matter, I'm not afraid of being dirty. Wang Lu lightly said, his imposing manner becoming more and more powerful. Although he knew that he was bound by the big heart demon oath, Xia still felt that the opposite party seemed to be able to rush up at any time and use the crudest and most direct means to kill him. Therefore, he hurriedly said, I have people in the Yu clan of Celestial Water Lake. This trump card was really unexpected. Wang Lu let out a soft cry of surprise and slightly restrained his momentum. Celestial Water Lake? Seeing that his trump card worked, Xia suddenly felt lucky to have escaped from the jaws of death. However, things had not been settled yet. Wang Lu could turn against him at any time. Therefore, Xia didn't dare to take it lightly. His brain quickly organized the wording to achieve the best effect. You came to Yunzhou to gain experience and pretended to be a cultivator from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake. It's because you have a junior sister from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake in Lingjian School, right? Wang Lu nodded. Yes, by her convenience, Luli and I got two identities. So, when you learned about this, you sent people to Celestial Water Lake? Well, although the Yu family has some reputation, in the last 2 generations, except for Yu Xinyao, the others are not good. Even the head of the family is barely a high-level Daoist master of King Pill. Moreover, although they have the cultivation, they are not good at fighting. They are a family famous for refining tools, so their strength is not strong. If your Beast Master School were to use force to threaten me, the Yu family would not have the ability to resist. So, you want to use the Yu family to threaten me? Xia said, I don't dare to say it's a threat, but I hope you must think about it clearly. There's no need to make it a lose-lose situation. Wang Lu sneered. Lose-lose situation? Is there something wrong with your brain? Even if the Yu family people die, what does it have to do with me? Xia seriously said, don't pretend. As far as I know, you shouldn't be that kind of person. Although your reputation is in dispute because of the earth-shattering bet in the sect competition a few years ago, none of the information shows that you are a cold-blooded cultivator who is cruel to your own people. On the contrary, most of the information speculated that you have a protective mentality. Ha ha ha, well said. Wang Lu laughed. Although in theory, whatever your Beast Master School did to the Yu family, you should bear the responsibility alone. However, I won't completely stay out of it. After all, when I asked for junior sister's identity, it means that once I provoke an opponent, it will implicate her family. However, I want to ask you, when you bought the information from the intelligence merchant at a high price, did it ever mention that I'm an idiot? Xia was stunned. What kind of question is this? If he answered seriously, of course, it was impossible. On the contrary, any of the information would focus on describing Wang Lu's intelligence. Perhaps purely in terms of intelligence, there was no evidence to prove that he was smarter than those famous geniuses in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, more proficient in calculation. However, at least, he was absolutely not an idiot. And from his own experience. Xia also boasted that he was smart, but ever since he confronted Wang Lu, every confrontation was a complete rout. Now that Wang Lu asked such a question, could it be that? I've long guessed that some despicable people would use this to threaten me, so I've made preparations in advance. You think that your evil plan has succeeded, but in fact, you're just showing off your shamelessness for no reason. Wang Lu said. Obviously, his stature was not as tall and sturdy as Tiger King's, but he revealed a condescending and disdainful look. What a pathetic creature. You want to trick me, right? Xia's mind heated up, and his mood suddenly went out of control. Do you think I'm an idiot? Guessed that this might happen, and took precautions in advance? You really have such foresight. How could you not expect that the cat girl Ling Yan was sent by me as an undercover agent? Moreover, you still have a clear conscience in accepting her as your subordinate, and thus seriously injuring your baby junior sister. Upon hearing Xia's roar, Wang Lu's smile disappeared, and his brows gradually furrowed. That's right, it was indeed his own judgment error that caused Luli to suffer this ordeal. Although it didn't lead to the worst result, it was not Wang Lu's credit. If it weren't for Luli herself testing the poison for many years, this time, the situation would be really troublesome. Although being pointed at and scolded by a wretch was somewhat unfashionable, nevertheless, it was an impressive lesson. Seeing that Wang Lu didn't speak, Xia thought that he had guessed correctly and began to laugh wildly. Sure enough, I guessed it right. You're tricking me. Actually, in normal times, although Xia had a variety of flaws, he was not an impulsive person. It was just that, after being hit by Wang Lu's burning heart fist twice, his rational mind was damaged, and his heart was set ablaze. Thus, his mood could no longer be controlled. While laughing, he took out a crystal mirror. I've already let Chi-Ho take the spirit beasts to Celestial Water Lake. Although he was seriously injured and couldn't be of use, he carried my token, which allowed him to command a spirit beast that has been in human form for a long time. That spirit beast's cultivation base is infinitely close to Yuanying stage, and it alone can flatten more than 100 people of Yu family at Celestial Water Lake. A day ago, I got the news from Chi-Ho that I've exchanged my token for that spirit beast's promise. Now, I've probably already controlled the entire Yu family. Whether they live or die, it all depends on your reaction. While speaking, he reluctantly transferred a trace of magical power into the mirror, activating the mechanism, and then light and shadow were reflected from the mirror. That was the magical tool that he gave to Chi-Ho to maintain contact with him. Now, as long as he let Wang Lu see the scene of Yu family being completely controlled by him, he believed that he would make a rational choice. Moreover, if he operated it well, perhaps not only he could save his own life, he could even ask for the immortal beast Moon Spirit. That was something that even the real Tiger King couldn't do, but in his hand, there was a hope for a comeback. This should be enough to show that he was stronger than the real one, right? Thinking about this, time passed by bit. A moment later, Xia suddenly discovered that, although the crystal mirror in his hand reflected light and shadow, the light had been distorted and blurred, and he couldn't see the real face. This was because the two sides holding the mirror did not strictly synchronize the magical power, which caused the distortion. Bing didn't care. At this time, he was outputting Tiger King's magical power, which was quite different from the original, so it was normal for there to be a change. However, as long as Chi-Ho adjusted it, the two sides could synchronize. Chi-Ho, what are you doing? Hurry up and adjust your magical power. Xia angrily urged. At this time, he had yet to recover from his serious injury, so he didn't have the energy to adjust the magical power. After waiting for a while, the light in the mirror was still unstable. Xia felt that a haze had once again gathered in his heart. It seemed that something important was about to go wrong. Actually, I'm not a genius who calculates everything. What I can do is nothing more than to do things in detail. Before I went down the mountain, I guessed that I might bring trouble to Yu family, but it's impossible to predict in advance what kind of trouble I would encounter, what kind of opponent I would encounter, and it's even more impossible to invest a lot of resources to strengthen the defense. With so many resources, I should just keep them for my own use, okay? Therefore, I took advantage of the situation. This time, in addition to me and Luli going down the mountain, there are also other disciples in the sect who got the opportunity to go down the mountain for experiential learning. Junior sister Yuxinyao happened to be planning to go home to visit her family, so I told her that she could take this opportunity to invite other senior brothers and sisters to her home as a guest. Yu family is a big refiner, so we could take this opportunity to send some magical tools to form good karma. And at that time, the one who came with her as a guest. Wang Lu said, deliberately tantalizing him. After a pause, he revealed the answer. The one who accompanied her is our big sister of Spirit Sword Mountain, Zhu Shiyao. Zhu Shi Yao? Xia gawked for a moment before he remembered that she was the head of the successor disciples of Lingjian School, the peerless genius whose strength was even above Wang Lu and Lu Li. However, no matter how talented she was, her current cultivation base was at most low-level Shudan stage. In the face of a spirit beast that was close to Yuanying stage, she had no chance. That was one of his most proud works in the southern heaven region as a beast tamer. Compared to the cat girl Ling Yan, its strength was many times stronger, simply not on the same level. The only hateful thing was that, because of some lucky coincidences, the imprint on that spirit beast was not particularly stable. Therefore, he could only occasionally ask for help from him, but could not enslave it as he pleased like he did with Ling Yan. With him, along with a large number of low-level spirit beasts that formed the 10,000 beasts great array, a Miryu family of celestial water lake and a Shudan stage Zhu Shiyao. While he was thinking, the light and shadow in the crystal mirror suddenly changed. Xia was inwardly delighted, thinking, Chi Ho, that idiot, finally reacted? He should have succeeded. Not only the Yu family, but also Yu Xinyao who went home to visit her family, as well as that Zhu Shiyao. All of them should be under his control. That is an out-and-out brilliant achievement, as long as... In the throbbing heartbeat sound, the light and shadow finally condensed into shape, and a voice came from the mirror. It was Chi Ho. However, at this time, his face was full of blood, his body was seriously injured, and his voice was weak. Failed. That person is so strong. You never told me before that there would be such a person. With just one sword strike, that shape-shifted spirit beast was beheaded. Even its primordial spirit couldn't escape. We are now, crash. Chi Ho's voice abruptly stopped. It turned out that Xia had inadvertently crushed the mirror. His body trembled uncontrollably, indicating the infinite despair and panic in his heart. This time, it was really over. Chapter 211. Sending Chi Ho to the celestial water lake Yu family was undoubtedly a dangerous move, even a dead move. At first, it was just to verify the identity of Wang Lu and Lu Li through the channel of the celestial water lake. And this step was indeed very fast. Chi Ho infiltrated the celestial water lake Yu family and soon found out the truth, an unexpected truth. When Xia learned that Wang Lu came from the Lingjian school, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, the fear in his heart once overwhelmed his greed. The 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were not as simple as being one level stronger than the top-rank sections. Except for the special case of the Lingjian school, the other 4 super sects, no matter how the later generations painted them, in the end, their status was piled up by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. More than 6,000 years ago, the Age of Chaos disintegrated the almost absolute ruling position of Kunlun Immortal Sect. 2,000 years ago, the Great War of Immortals and Demons established the supreme status of Shengjing Sect. 10,000 Art Sect and Royal Soldier Sect also took advantage of the situation and established their own sections. The rise of Spirit Sword Mountain was relatively low-key. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, its tentacles have always been limited to the Blue River region, never expanding outward. There was quite a controversy in the Wanxian League as to why it could be on par with the other 4 super sections. However, from one point of view, Spirit Sword Mountain absolutely could not be ignored. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, Lingjian School had never lost in a foreign war. At least, no sect dared to confidently say that they had won against Lingjian School in a sect-level large-scale war, none of them. Therefore, Xia absolutely did not want to provoke Lingjian School. Even if Lingjian School's influence outside of the Blue River region was notoriously weak, even worse than some middle-rank sects, it was, after all, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. If it was just teaching Wang Lu a lesson until he was disheveled and even bleeding, Spirit Sword Mountain would not have too much of a reaction. For these super sects, if their talented disciples suffered setbacks, not only would it not damage their reputation, it would also be a good thing. It could let their arrogant disciples grow up step by step, so what if they lost some face? Only Royal Soldier Sect was relatively protective. However, if Xia used despicable means to threaten a sect disciple's family, then it would be a different matter. Lingjian School would never tolerate such a despicable act. As for how to retaliate, Lingjian's school had no precedent. However, if they followed the example of the Xingjing sect, one of the 5 uniques, Beast Master School wouldn't be able to be ranked among the top-ranked sects in the next 200 years. Xia certainly didn't want to provoke such a terrifying opponent, but at this time, his life was at stake. Did he have a choice? His biggest trump card had failed, so even if he knew that it was like drinking poison to quench his thirst, he could only do it first. However, he never would have thought that things would change so quickly. In order to be on the safe side, although he had ordered Qi Ho to pay close attention to the Yu clan's manner a day ago, the real order to take action was actually made after Wang Lu had cracked his first trump card, which was just a few sentences ago. Therefore, rather than saying that Wang Lu was deceiving him, it would be better to say that he was deceiving Wang Lu. Qi Ho and his shape-shifted spirit beast had indeed arrived at the celestial water lake Yu clan, but they didn't make their move to start the war. Of course, in Xia's calculation, a spirit beast at the limit of King Pill, plus the 10,000 beasts array arranged by Qi Ho, would be able to control the situation with just a few sentences. However, he didn't expect that after a few sentences, the situation had undergone such a dramatic change. Big Sister is indeed Big Sister. She's always so mighty. I thought that after my and Lu Li's fortuitous encounter, even if I can't surpass her, at least, I would be able to keep pace with her. It seems like I still have to practice. Wang Lu repeatedly clicked his tongue, but each of his words made Xia's mood further fall to the bottom. However, it was also at this time that Xiaoqi's primordial spirit voice rang in Wang Lu's ears, "Enough. Why are you talking nonsense with that trash? Don't you know that talking nonsense is easy to be overturned? My situation here is not optimistic, why don't you hurry back?" There was still a mocking and disdainful smile hanging on Wang Lu's face, but in the primordial spirit conversation with Xiaoqi, his voice was full of helplessness. Go back? What's going on? Including the Beast Master School's spirit beasts, there are 20 King Pill level experts around me. I'm in midair, my feet don't touch the ground, and my non-phase method hasn't reached the realm of void facing the wind yet. Do you really think I can kill my way in and out? Xiaoqi was also stunned. You. In other words, just now, you were impulsive and rushed into the enemy's formation, and then you were trapped there and couldn't come back? Well, even when you raised your sword to behead Xia, it was also a pretense? In fact, you can't even make your move. Then what should I do? Do you need my help? Are you going to let go? Forget it, I can solve it myself. Even if I don't make my move, it doesn't matter, it won't take too long. I'll have to trouble you to hold Lu Li's side, I'll be back soon. With that, Wang Lu cut off the conversation with Xiaoqi and turned his attention back to Xia. All of his cards have failed, Xia was really forced into a dead end. His mind was at a loss, and infinite despair was reflected in his tiger head. However, at this time, he heard Wang Lu leisurely open his mouth. If you want to live, I'll give you a chance. What? Kneel down and apologize, hand over your antidote, and I'll spare your life. Of course, don't get me wrong, I really need the antidote. It's nothing more than to let my junior sister quickly end her pain. If you don't hand it over, it doesn't matter to me. Xia's eyes showed a struggle. A moment later, he tremblingly took out a small blue bottle from his mustard seed bag. Wang Lu took it and directly threw it to Xiaoqi in the full moon valley behind him. Okay, I'll take the antidote. Next, as long as you kneel down and apologize, I'll let bygones be bygones. Xia hoarsely said, do you dare to swear? Big heart demon oath, say you'll let bygones be bygones. Wang Lu laughed. Big heart demon oath? It doesn't matter. Do you really think your life is valuable? In my opinion, the life and death of a trash like you is really not important. Therefore, if you kneel down and kneel properly, it will make me feel better. It doesn't matter if I let you live. Next, Wang Lu really called out the heart demon and made an oath in front of the heart demon oath. Moreover, the binding scope of the oath was wider than Xia expected. I swear, as long as he kneels down and begs for mercy in front of me, my friends and I will never harm him again. If I violate this oath, I'm willing to die under the entanglement of the heart demon. When Xia heard Wang Lu's understatement of the oath, his intuition told him that there must be a trap. However, on the one hand, he was seriously injured and his Dao heart was damaged, so his thinking ability had fallen to the bottom. On the other hand, in order to survive, he had no other choice. Therefore, after struggling for a long time, he finally slowly lowered his body. Since he was in mid-air, his knees naturally couldn't touch the ground, but his kneeling action was exactly the same. Hee, you're ambitious. Wang Lu didn't even spare him a glance. He contemptuously smiled, turned around, and walked away. Xia, who was kneeling in mid-air, slowly moved his eyes along with Wang Lu. However, he suddenly found something wrong. How could he just let him go like that? He alone rushed into the enemy's formation, obviously surrounded by so many experts, but he actually just walked away like that? Did he make a mistake? However, before his dull brain could think deeper, he heard Wang Lu chuckle and said, "Elders of Beast Master School, why haven't you made your move yet? What are you waiting for?" This fake swindled, profaned the dignity of the great elder Lei Zhen, and almost brought a huge disaster to your Beast Master School. According to your school's rules, killing him on the spot is reasonable. Xia felt like a bomb exploded in his brain. Wang Lu's plan suddenly became clear. No matter how slow he was, he still understood. This guy was really a despicable and cunning person. Although I'm hostile to your great elder Lei Zhen, I recognize that he is a respectable man. He has strength, courage, and responsibility. If I didn't have the help of the mountain spirit, relying solely on my own cultivation base, I may not be his opponent even after 10 years. If it were any other occasion, I would be very willing to make friends with him. With that, Wang Lu looked back at the Beast Master School elders. Led by Elder Gong Yang, there was an unusually complex look on his face. Obviously, his heart was deeply shaken by Wang Lu's words. And the great elder Lei Zhen that I approve of would never use this kind of despicable trick. Hey, coercing a poor cat girl to act as an assassin for you, trying to kill a young girl, and even using an ancient strange poison. Even the behavior of the demon race was not as despicable as this. Moreover, when you failed, you even used other people's family to threaten them. Aren't you afraid of the divine punishment for such a despicable act? Speaking to this, the Beast Master School elders revealed a look of shame. Obviously, they were also deeply ashamed. No matter how many people criticized the conduct of the Beast Master School, they were not a sinister and despicable sect. Xia's conduct was completely not recognized by them. If it's the Real Tiger King, even if he really did an unjust act for various reasons, he would certainly persist until the end, even if he had to die. At least, he would never kneel down to others in order to drag out an ignoble existence. Wang Lu said, and then helplessly spread out his hands with a smile. That's why I say a fake is a fake. At the beginning, his performance was somewhat realistic, but when his life is in danger, his true colors are revealed. Xia, you only have this bit of skill. Xia. Hearing this name, several elders were shocked. Wang Lu asked, "What are you pretending for? He has already acted to this extent, yet you really can't see his identity? Forget it, I've done what I should say and do. Now, you guys can clean up your own sect." With that, Wang Lu no longer lingered. His figure floated down, and his figure rapidly shrank in Xia's line of sight. Xia felt his brain was buzzing. At the last moment, he was really unwilling to let it end like this. He loudly shouted, "Gong Yangyue, Liang Yu, what are you waiting for? You just let him go like this? Hurry up and catch him for me." If he could catch Wang Lu, there was still a chance to turn things around. As the division's great elder, even if he was seriously injured and dying, as long as he was still in control of the division, then. "Enough, you bastard." What answered a xia was a beast-toothed sword that pierced through his back and came out of his chest. Elder Liang Yu's eyes were red, and his hair stood up in anger. All his life, the great elder was magnanimous. Unexpectedly, after his death, his reputation was tarnished by a filthy person like you. You used the great elder's body to do such a shameless act, 100 deaths can't atone for it. A xia struggled to say that he was the great elder. However, the injury that broke out in his body made him unable to say a word, and his sight soon fell into darkness. Why? What exactly did I do wrong? I'm obviously better than the Real Tiger King, how could I become like this? Why do you, this group of mediocre people, refuse to obey me? If you could let me command you from the beginning, the ending would definitely be different. Idiot! In the darkness, a xia suddenly heard a roar. The familiar voice startled him. In the darkness, a burly body gradually emitted a glimmer of light. That person had a tiger face and a human body. It was actually Tiger King Lei Zhen. How could you? Aren't you dead? Why are you here? Am I also dead? Impossible, how could I die? Humph, you're indeed not dead, though not by much. This body and nascent soul are both mine, why can't I appear? Tiger King coldly snorted. What do you think? Using my body to play my role, are you happy now? A xia was stunned, and then he clenched his teeth. Yes, I did fail, so you're gloating over my misfortune? Tiger King scoffed at this. Do you think you're worthy for me to gloat over your misfortune? If that Wang Lu failed, I would actually laugh a few times. You. With that, Tiger King couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, I'm the one who harmed you. All these years, seeing how pitiful you are, knowing that your temperament has become more and more extreme, and your means of doing things are also unbearably despicable, yet I let it slide. I even acted as your umbrella to shelter you from the wind and rain, allowing you to become more and more arrogant, thinking that just because you have a bit of crooked talent, you would be successful in every endeavor. You went further and further on the wrong path, until finally, there's no turning back. Humph, to die in the hands of people like you, I only have myself to blame. A xia was stunned. What protective umbrella are you talking about? Tiger King coldly said, if it weren't for me protecting you, do you think that disciplinary elder would let you go just because of what you've done in the sect all these years? Do you really think it's because your beast-taming skill is good that you've been recognized by the higher-ups? If it weren't for me protecting you, you would have been locked in the black beast cage for 1,000 years. Now that I think about it, perhaps I should have let you live in the black beast cage for a few years. At that time, the sect leader also advised me that spoiling you too much would only harm others and myself. At that time, I just treated it as fart, but now it seems like I'm really blinded by lard. A xia's heart was filled with shock. How come I never knew about these things? Tiger King cast him a glance. Is it necessary for you to know? Why do you have to do so much for me? You were pushed out from the southern heaven region to the cloud region, could it be? Tiger King said, hey, why do you have to do so much? Do you still need to ask? Unfortunately, in these past few decades, I really didn't know that you're actually so reluctant. I remember that at the very beginning, I declared that if you don't like it, I won't force you. As a result, you took the initiative to crawl over. All these years, you've really endured humiliation." Listening to the ridicule in Tiger King's words, Xia's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He even quietly felt a trace of guilt. However, in the end, he still stubbornly said, "You can only blame yourself for being blind." Tiger King laughed. "Well said, I'm indeed blind and lost my brain, so I deserve to die in your hands. However, in any case, I'm smart for once before I die. Xia, after you took over my body, although my heart was filled with hatred, the words of a dying man are also kind. I thought that these past few decades were mostly happy, so I wanted to give you a final piece of advice. Unexpectedly, before I opened my mouth, you impatiently pounced on me. Therefore, I, your father, finally bit my tongue to commit suicide, swallowing that advice." "What advice?" "I, your father, want to warn you, you can provoke anyone, but don't provoke that kid Wang Lu, ha 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 ha. However, even if I told you at that time, you probably just treated it as fart, so you deserve to die here." Xia gritted his teeth. "I won't die. That's not up to you." Tiger King's smile faded, and the light on his body suddenly became intense, illuminating the surrounding scene. It was not the Jade Mansion or primordial spirit that Xia expected, nor was it the Crown Cloud Peak or the Full Moon Valley, but a place filled with dense smoke. A huge stone gate stood in front of him, and the towering figure exuded a heart-palpitating aura. "This is," Tiger King coldly said, "welcome to the gates of hell. Ghost. Okay, let's go in together." I don't want to die, go to hell yourself." Xia frantically struggled. However, when he brandished his fist, he found out that the strong body that he inherited from Tiger King had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by the emaciated body that he hated and cursed. Such a body had no resistance in front of Tiger King. Tiger King picked up Xia and laughed wildly all the way into the stone gate. "From now on, we have endless time to love. I, your father, swear that I will make you fall in love with me, ha 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 ha." Chapter 212. How is Lu Li's situation? After calmly withdrawing from the encirclement, Wang Lu's feet landed on the ground. The indifferent look on his face was immediately replaced by a trace of irrepressible anxiety. Shao Qi gave him a blank look. "You finally remembered the business? Really, when you're hot-headed, you don't care about anything else. Do you think you're mighty just because you rushed into the enemy's formation? Impossibly stupid. You've been bragging about the quality of a professional adventurer. Wasting time with a trash, you're really childish." Wang Lu urged, "Less nonsense, let's get down to business. What's the situation? You still have the face to urge me?" Shao Qi shook his head helplessly. "The situation isn't that great. Shao Liuli's poison resistance isn't bad, and with the antidote, the poison was quickly expelled. However, the dagger pierced her vitals, and with the poison erupting at the beginning, the damage is real." With that, Shao Qi bent down, turned the unconscious Lu Li over, and tore open the clothes on her back, revealing her snow-white back muscles. A black wound was ugly entrenched on her back, and along the wound, a black line spread to the rest of her body. Seeing the wound, Wang Lu could not help but frown. From the knowledge he learned in Cloud Hall, with the basic skill of Lingjian School's disciples, once they reached Shudan stage, their bodies would be highly tempered, and their vitality would be far stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Even Lu Li, who was known for being good at attack but not good at defense, her body's toughness was close to that of a common-sex Taoist Master King Pill. In theory, even if her heart was stabbed by a knife, she would not die, especially with the help of a Zen master like Shao Qi. Even if her head was cut off, as long as it was immediately reattached, she could still live. However, now that Lu Li was wrapped in Zen light, her injury did not improve. It could only be said that her injury had been so serious that it could not spontaneously enter the positive circulation. Just like if a person suffered a minor injury, the body could heal itself. However, if the injury was too serious, the loss of life would be far higher than the body's production capacity, even higher than the speed of treatment, which was incurable. Right now, Lu Li's situation was similar to this. Although the wound was not big, the damage inside was very serious, to the extent that it could not be healed at all. That dagger is indeed an ancient artifact. In addition to the poison attached to it, the structure of the dagger's blade is also very vicious. Look at the blade, there are very fine forks on it, and they form a destructive structure with each other. When it enters the body, it can quickly kill the vitality, just like a vicious curse. Speaking of this, Xiaoqi gritted his teeth and said, "That bastard is really cunning." Even if I get the antidote, I have to go all out to keep Liuli alive. I can't even relax a little. How vicious. Wang Lu waved his hand. There's no need to argue with a dead person. Concentrate on the current problem. While speaking, his brows furrowed, and his mind tried to recall what he learned in the Tin Cloud Hall. Every book on healing that he had read in the past 10 years of cultivation emerged one by one in Wang Lu's mind. After a long while, Wang Lu said, "Liuli's problem is that her injury is too serious, and she lost too much vitality. The essence of the healing spell of Zen is to stimulate one's own vitality. If one's own vitality is insufficient, the Zen method can't be used without rice. Since that's the case, how about directly supplementing her innate vitality?" Wang Lu said, "Although it's difficult to share the innate vitality of different people, Zen has the art of salvation, and all living beings are equal, so there should be a related spell, right?" Xiaoqi frowned and said, "I can, but right now, I'm just a doppelganger. I have the king pill and the body, but I don't have the innate vitality." I know. Moreover, how could I ask you to contribute your innate vitality for this kind of thing? I'm going to catch several Beast Master School bastards to sacrifice their lives." With that, Wang Lu got up and was about to start the fight again, but he was quickly stopped by Xiaoqi. "Wait a minute, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart and physique are pure. Ordinary people's innate vitality is turbid for her, which is harmful to her." Wang Lu asked, "Then what kind of innate vitality is needed to meet the standard? Is Pi Imu 2? 5 less than 50? Or do you want to make a purifier?" Xiaoqi glanced at Wang Lu and somewhat helplessly said, "In addition to having a high enough cultivation base and a pure enough method, it also needs to be a virgin boy and a virgin girl." Virgin. Wang Lu was suddenly stunned. He then looked up at the noisy group of Beast Master School cultivators on the Crown Cloud Peak, and then turned his head back. With a complex look, he sighed. "My mood right now is very delicate." Xiaoqi wryly smiled. "I can understand. To directly introduce other people's innate vitality into Lu Li's body, not only the quality of the innate vitality is very high, the quantity requirement is also very astonishing, because the consumption in the middle would be very astonishing." Wang Lu interrupted, "It doesn't matter. Saving people is more important. I can afford the price." Seven looked at him and said softly, "Does it matter even if it takes 100 years? Wang Lu gawked. 100 years? Is there a need to be so exaggerated? But then, without hesitation, he said, 100 years is 100 years, just take it." While speaking, he stretched out his hand and pressed the wound on Lu Li's back. However, the touch was stiff and cold, causing Wang Lu to frown. Not long ago, the girl's body was as soft as jade, but now, it was full of rotten death aura. Bastards of the beast taming school, this matter will not end here. However, although Wang Lu was ready to lose 100 years of his lifespan, Xiaoqi couldn't make his move. You've always been shrewd, you should know what losing 100 years of lifespan means, right? Now that your cultivation base has reached Xidan stage, your lifespan is only 300 years. Even if non-phase method has the ability to prolong your lifespan, it's only limited to 500 years. Losing 1/5 of your lifespan is not only 100 years, it will also have a serious impact on your immortal cultivation. It's very likely that you will encounter a great bottleneck in the future. Wang Lu disdainfully said, if there's a bottleneck, then I'll just break through it. How could a dignified void spirit root be afraid of a bottleneck? Losing 100 years of lifespan in one go, perhaps, it will reduce the quality of your spirit root, causing irreparable impact. Does that not matter? It doesn't matter. Saving Luli is the first priority. In any case, I'm a professional adventurer, who am I afraid of? What's more, my void spirit root is not enough to deceive me. If the quality of my spirit root declines, then so be it. At worst, I'll just walk the path of mortal cultivation, so I won't necessarily be worried to death. You. Seeing that Wang Lu's will was incomparably firm, Xiaoqi inwardly sighed with emotion. The master and disciple of non-phase peak were really carved from the same mold. Usually, they were so cheap that they wished they could beat them to death, but in critical times, they were more reliable than anyone else. This kid was young, but he already had the demeanor of his master. Perhaps, losing 100 years of lifespan was an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough? However, just as he was about to make his move, he suddenly heard a faint woman's voice. Use mine. Xiaoqi turned his eyes in surprise and saw that the cat girl Ling Yan, who had been unconscious after being severely injured by Quan Zohua, had opened her eyes and weakly but firmly said. All of this was caused by me, so naturally, I should make up for my mistake. If innate vitality can save her, no matter how much, I'm willing to pay. Xiaoqi's complexion was complicated. You, the cat girl said, although I've been tortured by a xia for decades, according to your human standards, I am still a virgin. Wang Lu laughed. What kind of green tea setting is this? Obviously, you've been defiled by a xia for decades, but you're still a virgin. Only your nostrils and ears are still virgins, you, a xia is withered. Wang Lu's smile froze, and then he awkwardly touched his nose. You continue, I won't interrupt. Use mine. My innate vitality will definitely meet your needs. Moreover, please give me a chance to atone for my sins. With that, the cat girl's voice became more and more miserable, full of self-blame and remorse. I've personally hurt the person I love the most. Now, I really want to die. Xiaoqi said, at that time, you had no choice, so it's not your fault. Moreover, since you have the heart, I believe Luli will forgive you. As for the innate vitality, your quality is far from Wang Lu's. If he wants 100 years, you may want more. Even if you're a spirit beast in human form, and your natural lifespan is longer than human beings, you still can't bear it. Unfortunately, Xiaoqi's consolation had no effect at all. The cat girl's figure suddenly moved, and like a lightning, she rushed to Lu Li's side. The two arms that were bitten off by Quan Zohua were bleeding at the same time. She then pressed the severed arms on Lu Li's back, letting her blood flow directly to Lu Li's wound. After a moment, the blood seemed to be burning, flashing with platinum light. You! Xiaoqi was taken aback. The cat girl actually forcibly burned her innate vitality. She didn't give other people the opportunity to stop her. Thus, in addition to receiving her overflowing innate vitality as soon as possible, there was no other way. He couldn't let her self-sacrifice go to waste. In desperation, Xiaoqi hastily operated his Zen technique and used the method of expiation to pour Ling Yan's innate vitality into Lu Li's body. With the influx of vitality, the gray color on Lu Li's wound quickly faded, and her originally stiff body gradually recovered its vitality. Lu Li's vitality was recovering at an alarming rate, but correspondingly, the cat girl was weakening at an alarming rate. A cultivator's innate vitality was extremely precious. Even if the cat girl had reached the peak of King Pill stage, it was impossible for her to squander her innate vitality at will. With the rapid loss of vitality, her body shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her human characteristics gradually degenerated, and the cat characteristics gradually strengthened. A moment later, her whole body almost shrunk by half. The whiskers on her cheeks became longer, her pair of cat ears became more conspicuous, and behind her thighs grew a hairy tail. This was the spirit beast's reverse form transformation. When its life was extremely exhausted, the transformed spirit beast might instinctively revert to its original beast form, using its wildness to prolong its life. However, once this process occurred, it meant that its original 100 years of bitter cultivation might be completely wasted. Once it completely reverted to its beast form, it would never be able to successfully transform its human form in this lifetime. The cat girl's repentance was so firm that she didn't hesitate to sacrifice her life. For a time, Xiaoqi couldn't bear it, but what could she do? Did she really want Wang Lu to sacrifice his 100 years of lifespan? How could she even open her mouth? But at this moment, Wang Lu shook his head and took the initiative to stretch out his hand. That's enough. What will she do when she wakes up like this? As he spoke, Wang Lu gently placed his hand on the cat girl's shoulder. A similar platinum light shone, and the cat girl's body trembled. The transfer of innate vitality was forced to stop. Wang Lu directly sent his vitality into the cat girl's body, which was like a vast ocean, extinguishing her spontaneous flames. Before the cat girl could ignite her vitality again, Xiaoqi directly swung the Buddhist staff and knocked her unconscious to the ground. Wang Lu stepped forward and took over the cat girl's position. Heh, it's better for me to do this kind of thing. If I let a stupid cat save the world, how can I, as the senior brother, show my face? As he spoke, his forehead was already dripping with sweat. Releasing innate vitality was not easy for Wang Lu, but at this moment, a creature that had been ignored for a long time quietly spoke. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. While Wang Lu and Xiaoqi were stunned, the immortal beast light cocoon not far away shone brightly. Chapter 213. The existence of the immortal beast moon spirit had indeed been ignored for a long time. After Wang Lu summoned the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain to break through Tiger King's blockade, the Emperor essence spread all over the Grand Cloud Mountain, and the immortal beast moon spirit also took this opportunity to start the transformation process. It absorbed the moonlight, built a cocoon of light, curled itself up in it, and slowly transformed. For a common spirit beast, the transformation process had to go through the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation itself was against the heaven's will, not to mention the transformation from beast to human. Of course, after the end of the age of chaos, the intensity of the heavenly tribulation was not that high. As long as one was adequately prepared, there was usually nothing that could not be overcome. Cat girl Ling Yan's innate talent could be considered excellent. When she transformed, she had to withstand 3 strikes of Gung Jin divine thunder and successfully broke through the bottleneck. However, when it came to the level of immortal beast, even the heavenly tribulation was omitted. Perhaps for the heaven's will, the transformation of the immortal beast was the heaven's will, and there was no need to obstruct it. Therefore, the transformation process of the Grand Cloud Mountain's moon spirit was very smooth and quiet. So much so that when the situation was urgent, Wang Lu and the others even subconsciously ignored the immortal beast around them. Until this time, the immortal beast moon spirit took the initiative to issue its own voice. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. As the light and ethereal voice sounded in the full moon valley, the cocoon of light shone brightly. Although Wang Lu's eyes had undergone special training, they were still dazzled by the light. However, he could still vaguely see the outline of a beautiful woman. He slowly walked toward Lu Li and reached out his hand to gently touch her wound. Almost in an instant, the death aura in Lu Li's body was completely expelled. Full of vitality, like the sunshine, penetrated into every corner of her body. Lu Li uttered a cry as her injury was completely healed. However, she was still asleep and didn't immediately resuscitation. As Lu Li was completely out of danger, the light of the moon spirit quickly converged, revealing its true appearance. Wang Lu stared dumbfoundedly at the successfully transformed moon spirit in front of him. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, for a moment, he didn't know what to say. After the moon spirit transformed, it was just as Wang Lu had expected. She was an extremely beautiful and refined young girl. She looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and her eyebrows were 80 to 90% similar to Fairy Yuntai. However, she was more vigorous than Yuntai, and her eyes also carried an irrepressible curiosity and quick-wittedness. After withdrawing the light, the girl wore an intoxicating smile and said to Wang Lu, "Thank you." It was rare for Wang Lu to calm down. He coughed, cleared his throat, and then said, "You're welcome. I have an agreement with Grand Cloud Fairy, so these are all things that I should do. It's just that, don't you want to wear some clothes?" Moon Spirit, who had just finished transforming, naturally maintained its original state, completely naked. Her voluptuous chest, slender waist, and plump buttocks all outlined a perfect curve. Her figure was slender and graceful. Of course, the most fascinating and sensitive part of a woman's body could also be seen at a glance. As a professional adventurer, Wang Lu would never feel cramped because of a mere nude woman. However, he also had to admit that Moon Spirit's flawless figure was by no means as simple as mere nude woman. Her soul-stirring beauty, even with his non-phase immortal heart, could not help but palpitate with eagerness. Moon Spirit gawked for a moment. She innocently and lightly walked around in front of Wang Lu. "Don't I look good? Why do you look so embarrassed?" Wang Lu said. "I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy's white dress is whiter than snow. How come it turned into the Emperor's white dress?" Moon Spirit said with a smile, "Mom said that the clothes on her body symbolized the bondage of the world of mortals. She hopes that I can live freely in the future, so I think I shouldn't wear clothes, right? But since you think it's not suitable, it seems that there's a big difference between my perception and reality, then." The girl raised her hand, and the sensitive part of her body lit up with white light, blocking the sight of others. Unexpectedly, "You're from the Holy Light Party." Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. Seeing that the girl was determined, he no longer tried to persuade her. In any case, the other party was willing to give out benefits, so why should he stop her? Let's quickly display the good student's photographic memory and remember as much as we can. At the beginning of the human form transformation, the immortal beast was ignorant of worldly affairs, ignorant of human feelings, pure as a white paper. However, looking at her demeanor, she was not like Lu Li and Quan Zouhua who gave up treatment. When she was in her immortal beast form, she was still mainly beastly. However, after her human form, her mind was enlightened, and her rationality grew. After 3 to 5 days, she would be familiar with the rules, and naturally, she would have a sense of shame. At that time, there would be no such beautiful scenery. However, this trip to the Grand Cloud Mountain had finally come to an end. Moon Spirit had taken human form, and the enemies were all dead. Basically, everything that could be done had been done. Now, as long as they could bring Moon Spirit back to the mountain, this experiential learning trip would be a success. And in order to avoid a long delay, they would directly use the Heavenly Talisman. Although the value of the spirit sword heavenly talisman was not cheap, compared to the immortal beast, it was just a drop in the bucket. Thus, Wang Lu didn't hesitate to use it. He took out the heavenly talisman from his mustard seed bag. It was a glittering and translucent, jade-like talisman, which was carefully written with thousands of characters. Each character contained a mysterious power. The lower half of the talisman was left blank, which was the place where the user left his own mark. Once the mark was left on the heavenly talisman, as long as one was within 100 meters of the heavenly talisman, he would be pulled into the transmission array and sent to the designated location. Currently, only Wang Lu, Lu Li, and Quan Zouhua were left on the spirit sword heavenly talisman. Now, it needed the cat girl, Xiao Qi, and moon spirit to leave their names on it. A heavenly talisman could transport 10 people, so there were still a lot of empty spots. Seeing this life-saving spirit sword heavenly talisman, Xiao Qi couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the past, when I was traveling with your master, she always talked about this thing for a long time. She said that if she had this spirit sword heavenly talisman to save her life, she would dare to explore the 9 regions. Unfortunately, I've never seen her collect enough sect points. Wang Lu snorted disdainfully. That poor girl almost sold her kidney every day. If not because the sect leader pitied her and gave her an elder's tribute every month, she would have held the 99% sign and went to the mysterious sky mansion to block the door. Xiao Qi left his own unique mark on the heavenly talisman and said with a smile, "Don't slander her like that. Although her personality is indeed a bit. But she's actually very good at making money." Wang Lu was surprised. Very good at making money? Could it be that there are people in the Wanxian League who buy moral integrity at a high price? No, she's actually very business-minded. She's made a lot of money in several businesses. However, while she's good at making money, she's also good at spending money. She's not the same as you, her cultivation consumption is very terrifying, so, while explaining with a smile, Xiao Qi picked up the cat girl, who was in a trance because of burning her innate vitality. He pulled out a strand of her whiskers, and when the cat girl meowed in pain, he melted the whiskers into a stream of pure magical power and left 2 words on the heavenly talisman, Spirit Smoke. Finally, only Moon Spirit was left. The girl looked at the heavenly talisman. Although I don't understand what it is, it looks very powerful. What is it used for? To take you away from this place and back to my spirit sword mountain. Away from here? The girl looked up and softly asked, "This is my home. But there are evil guests wreaking havoc in your home, while my great spirit sword mountain has beautiful scenery, fragrant flowers, rich spiritual energy, and big fish and meat." Xiao Qi said, "Hey, isn't this not neat at all?" The girl's interest was obviously aroused. "Is it a very interesting place?" "Of course it is. Moreover, Grand Cloud Fairy doesn't want you to be trapped in the Grand Cloud Mountain. The world is big, you can travel everywhere." The girl vigorously nodded. I understand. Mom said you're a trustworthy person, so I'll go with you. So, do you want me to leave a mark on the heavenly talisman? How do I do that? Wang Lu said, "Add a bit of innate vitality to your real name." Well, your real name must be a name that resonates with your heart. I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy left you the name Shixian, so you still lack a surname. Why don't you take my surname Wang? Moon Spirit shook her head. No, I want my surname to be Bai. As you wish. Wang Lu indifferently handed over the heavenly talisman, waiting for the other party to condense the mark. The girl named Bai Shixian gently shook her finger and began to condense her own mark. This immortal beast transformation was really an innate magical ability. Generally speaking, people who had never condensed their original life mark would need at least a period of time to integrate their real name into their innate vitality, and then combine the two to form a mark. However, Bai Shixian waved her hand and the mark was formed, looking like a crescent white moon. However, just as Bai Shixian was about to integrate the mark into the heavenly talisman, Shao Qi's complexion suddenly changed. He waved his monk's staff in the air. The next moment, the monk's staff issued a buzzing sound, and the Zen light was like a covering half of the sky in the full moon valley. However, in an instant, the Zen light was pierced and crushed by a sharp beam of light. Shao Qi let out a muffled groan, staggered back a few steps, and his 7 orifices overflowed with blood. That beam of light was blocked by Shao Qi's Zen technique, but as if it was alive, halfway through, it once again accelerated to stab Wang Lu. Wang Lu instinctively retracted his right hand that was holding the heavenly talisman, only to feel a burst of pain in his hand. A few of his fingers had been cut off, but fortunately, the heavenly talisman was not damaged. However, the crisis had already arrived, and the drama was about to come to an end, but now there was another wave. Despite Wang Lu's good mentality, he could not help but feel a bit anxious. In particular, that spell just now, its momentum was fierce and overbearing, and its power was incomparably great. Moreover, its magical power seemed to have a life of its own, which was a typical characteristic of a Yuanying stage cultivator. Moreover, it was a Yuanying stage cultivator whose cultivation base was even higher than Tiger King. Don't even think about leaving. Along with a roar that shook the valley, a dark cloud came from afar, blotting out the sky. Although it was far away, the clouds revealed a majestic aura that suppressed all living beings, which made people breathless. Wang Lu struggled to look up, trying to see through the dark cloud. However, what was reflected in his line of sight were thousands of strange phenomena. In the dark cloud, there seemed to be 10,000 beasts galloping, thunder and lightning, and there was a storm. Wang Lu quickly shook his head. His non-phase immortal heart floated high above his jade mansion, and then, together with his primordial spirit, void core, and non-phase emperor bone, he got rid of the erosion of these strange phenomena. My goodness, peak Yuanying stage, raising his hand and lifting his foot, there was a strange phenomenon, and his primordial spirit could invade and disturb people's heart. All of these showed that the cultivation base of the person who came had reached the peak Yuanying stage. His heart was the will of the heaven, so there were dark clouds blotting out the sun, and there were strange phenomena. At the same time, his primordial spirit was highly released, and there was a faint tendency for it to multiply, so that people who touched it would be disturbed. In the entire Wanxian League, this kind of cultivation base could be regarded as quite an expert. If one only considered cultivation base, the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall of Spirit Sword Mountain were also at this level. However, the person who came was naturally not an elder of Spirit Sword Mountain. A moment later, the dark cloud dissipated, revealing a dignified and solemn elder. That person was dressed in black, and his whole body was surrounded by thunder and flame. His 2 thick arms were crossed in front of his chest, and his arms were covered with black scales, which made him look even more ferocious. Shao Qi sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Beast Master School's disciplinary elder. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.